What's up, guys? Davidson Baker here, the host of this podcast that I'm very thankful that you have arrived to and or clicked on and or whichever way you have stumbled upon it. If you're watching this, the video portion on YouTube or what may have you, you can probably already draw the conclusion that I look damn near dead. I am exhausted. I am burnt out. I have been doing this all day long and for portions of yesterday, particularly within the last few hours. What this podcast is the only way that I properly kind of knew how to celebrate the life of an absolute icon, somebody that is a role model for many, and tragically enough was, a husband and dad to others, as well as a really good teammate. And one thing that I do advise to you as you go on and listen to this podcast, whether you were a Kobe fan or not, the way that this man touched people's lives in ways that is almost undescribable is not only incredibly apparent through each person that was so kind to come on and help me out with this, but also very apparent in those that love the game of basketball. And I worked my ass off on this, and this is my way of celebrating the life of Kobe Bean Bryant, the only way that I know how, featuring more than 10 incredible and intelligent people from all walks of life. So I hope you enjoy. She is Travis Sanders. He is coming from a basement, and he does not have headphones. But doing well. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. Obviously, the circumstances that bring you and I to this point, as well as all the other people that were so kind enough to come on, are disheartening at the very least. Regardless, I would feel remiss if I didn't at least try to do something like this. And man, speaking from this exact moment right now, I think it has a chance to be quite I'm looking for the right words here. Quite an awesome way to remember his legacy. And I guess that's where we'll go ahead and begin, because legacy is thrown around a lot. You want to know what has stood out to me is I don't think in my entire life, loving and coveting anything with a ball, puck, net, you name it, since I was 3, I don't think that I can remember an individual that had his first act in basketball, not only had his first act, but came in at 18 and grew up right in front of our eyes, have a legacy so powerful, and then for all things considered, it seemed like the second act, which, let's be honest, a lot of athletes, their second act's not good. Their retirement is not good. He seemed like somehow, some way, he was gonna be on par in his second act, like bringing up his family and kind of honing his daughter, who, by the way, had to tug on him to get them into basketball. Kobe wanted nothing to do with basketball in the early days of his retirement until his daughters came to him. And I think that's what will stick with me personally the most. When you think of legacy and Kobe, is it something like that? Or I've heard a lot of really interesting answers. What pops in your head?
Yeah, definitely very similar. I mean, let's be honest. Anytime you are any sort of basketball fan, anytime you are known in sports by one name, that goes to show something. People know if you hear Kobe, it's Kobe Bryant.
I've been waiting on someone to say that. You're the first person to say that.
And I think everybody kind of understands that. Everybody hears that and they're like, oh yeah, of course, Kobe Bryant. And so with that being said, I think that in and of itself goes to show that he has, a lasting effect and a legacy that we kind of talk about. Obviously, the basketball, the accolades, the accomplishments, those things speak for themselves. But kind of like you said, not many athletes go into their quote unquote second life or whatever you want to call it, their second go around, and it's effective and it's positive.
It's wholesome, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and we see. I mean, we only got to see glimpses of what Kobe was doing. You look at it this way. When's the last time women's basketball was this prevalent? I'll give you the answer. It was never, because Kobe kind of had that impact. Kobe, obviously, with his daughter, showing so much interest in basketball and wanting to be good. He talked a lot about that, but just the support that he showed for, the WNBA and college basketball. Like, he had women's college basketball. You have girls from different teams talking about how Kobe's their idol. And some of these girls hadn't even some of these girls grew up, and by the time they knew what was going on during the game, Kobe had been in the latter part of his career. And so it's just crazy to think that somebody can have, obviously the effect that he did, but leave the legacy he did, and just the way that this all panned out is obviously super unfortunate.
It is tragic. And one of my favorite podcasts I listen to pretty much every day, Rich Eisen. That's a guy, and he has said it time and time again. He wears emotion on his sleeve like his dad taught him to. And he was moved to tears by the end of his epilogue a little bit, just by saying, like, screw the people that just look at you and say life's not fair. You want to know why? Because this is not fair. This far beyond basketball, far beyond the memories. Like, there is a wife now mourning the death of her husband and daughter, and you can't. And Eisen said it. You cannot, by just simply looking me in the eyes and saying life's not fair, you cannot convince me that that's okay. You can't. You just can't do it. And man, you're on fire, and I'll tell you why. Because you bring up a lot of things I've been waiting on people to bring up, and no one has yet. The female aspect of things. How many? I think there are some. Like, I think there are some girls that. There are only a select few of girls, I would imagine, that you and I know that really love the game. A lot of them like it. A lot of them watch it when it's on. There's a very few select individuals that really love the game that are females that I know. Not a whole lot of them are LeBron people. I don't know what that is.
That is crazy.
It is. I don't know what that is. A mass majority of them. I'll tell you what. A mass majority of them are either Kobe people. Obviously, you have Curry. I mean, watching Steph Curry's game is very easy on the eyes. I heard of Giannis one time, and that really impressed me. I was like, whoa. You really watch basketball.
Oh, yeah.
But I hear Steph and Kobe. I don't hear LeBron. And that brings me to a question I wanted to ask you, and I've been asking everybody else because I think it's a fascinating question. I remember just sitting in the car, refreshing Twitter, and then all of a sudden, boom, Woj, LeBron James has signed with the Lakers, and it's like, okay, that's done. Figured it was going to happen. Here he is. Mixed reviews from Lakers fans that have spent such a long, agonizing time in their fandom trying to defend Kobe by building him up over LeBron, which is obviously so unnecessary. But here's the question. Do you think now, obviously with the tragic set of circumstances that has become reality, and the light that we now, and maybe some people that don't follow the game closely like you and I do, didn't know about Kobe and LeBron's relationship, do you think that now that this has happened, and now that this is how things are going to be, do you think LeBron is going to be universally from Laker fandom looked at any differently as a result? Whether that's fair or not. Like, what do you think about that?
That's a great question, actually, because the way you worded it is very intriguing in terms of that's really the reality of it. Now,
you and I both know people that did not want LeBron in yellow and purple. I don't care what he does. I don't care. Don't want him on my team. You know?
Yeah. No, 100%. Let me touch on the first part to begin with, because I think when he did sign with the Lakers, it became reality, like you said. It was very mixed. It was very mixed. The reviews were, like you said, because there was the people, like you said, that grew up huge Kobe fans. Kobe stayed with the Lakers his whole career. Like, this is Kobe. The Lakers are Kobe, and then obviously before, you got Magic and all those guys. But in this era, it was Kobe. And then I think it took Kobe coming out and almost accepting this idea that greatness was coming, because anybody that's in their right mind that understands basketball knows that LeBron represents greatness and only greatness. And so with that being said, I think it was tough for Lakers fans, diehard Lakers fans, to accept the fact that, hey, it's greatness coming. It's just not in the same form that it was, you guys had Kobe.
Yep, of course. But it's also like, another thing that my man Eli and I were just talking about. I get it. This is an incredibly sensitive topic, especially on January 29th, Tuesday, or Wednesday, 3 days after this has happened. You can't put into words with the families that are involved, let alone of Kobe and Gianna. I mean, there were 7 other people that lost their lives. The word tragedy does not really put a bow on things here. However, I say that because that's my disclaimer to what I'm getting ready to say, because what I'm getting ready to say might sound insensitive to that issue. The page is going to turn. I'm not saying everybody's going to forget Kobe. I'm not saying any of that. However, on Friday night, the Lakers are going to have to lace up and play the Portland Trail Blazers. And then they're going to have to play another game. And then they're going to have to play another game. And all the way so on and so forth. Have you thought for a second, because it took me a while, obviously, with just feeling so sad for everybody involved, have you thought for a second of what kind of LeBron James we're about to get? Because it is a terrifying entity. It really is.
It is. Well,
I really hope that people don't take that as an insensitive comment. It's just reality. It's just reality.
The reality is, well, let me tell you this. Let me start with this. And I talked about this with my friends a few days ago, actually, following the tragedy. But like you said, at some point, the page is going to have to turn. I think we're still kind of in that grieving process, if
Absolutely.
you will. And I think any time you're dealing with death, and it being so, sensitive, you almost have to, that grieving process is, it can be a long time for some people and it can be a shorter time for others. And so with that being said, and it being such a large population, at some point there's going to be that celebratory period, that, people begin to, and people already have a little bit, but people.
That's all we're doing right now, homie. That's all we're doing right now.
Right. And so at some point, people are going to start celebrating Kobe's, who he was as not only as a basketball player, but as a father, a husband, a mentor. Like, the list goes on and on and on. And so once that celebration period starts, I think people begin to get back to, ground zero, and they start looking at things a little bit more objectively. But to touch on the LeBron, subject, I have no idea what's going to happen.
I don't know what to expect.
Part of me is like, as a sports fan, obviously a sports enthusiast, like, I'm like, hey, let's get to it, Bron, take over, like, put this franchise on your back, go win a NBA Finals.
Just from the basketball savant standpoint, absolutely.
I saw somebody on Twitter say, what if he screamed, "This is for Kobe," like he did, like, "This is for Cleveland." Like, that stuff gave me chills, and I was like,
he will. He will.
Something like that would be just almost like, that would be like the story's written, and you know what I mean? But part of me is also like, they've got to understand that, like, you can't expect LeBron to just do that. Like, this, you know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's almost.
I am completely. I'm absolutely understanding. Absolutely.
I want him to do that.
Oh no.
For it to be expected is almost unfair.
No, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. it's just something that a lot of people haven't thought about yet, because obviously, people say all the time, like, there's life after basketball for those that retire. There's in this instance, while we are sitting here talking about the great things that Kobe did, dude, we can talk on the court all day. We can talk off the court all day. We get like there's just so many layers. But with that comment, there's life after basketball. There's gonna be basketball after this instance of death, if that makes sense. Right. And this is something that you and I could talk about, and something I'm not gonna bounce off. Someone that has idolized this man since he's 5. Yeah. But it is a perspective that I don't think a lot of people, and maybe rightfully so, are really analyzing at the moment. Because, like I said, on Friday they're gonna have to lace it up, and who knows? Maybe half of the board of the league would have wanted him to lace it up on Monday. Who knows? Yeah. And I think that would have been a tragic mistake, just given the fact that you saw around the league. I'll ask you that. What did you think about that? You see around the league, forget the 24 seconds, which is fantastic. Forget the purposeful 8-second violations that come after the 24-second violations, also fantastic. But forget all about that for a minute. We're talking about grown men, professional athletes, just helpless to their own emotions. And I'm talking, I say from all walks of life a lot with this podcast, because I'm talking to you and I'm talking to all kinds of people that I've been so fortunate to meet and have been so fortunate to call my friends. This is all walks of life. Austin Rivers and Tyson Chandler in Houston, Trae Young coming out wearing number 8. And that broke my heart too. Gianna saying that Trae Young's her favorite player.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I'll tell you what. The crazy thing to me, just to kind of touch on, your point about how these grown men are coming out here and they're, like you said, they're kind of like helpless. Just the two people you named, Austin Rivers or Trae. Let's use Trae Young and Tyson Chandler. Those guys are like 15 years apart, and so that goes to show the length of impact, I guess, if you will, for the lack of better.
All he ever did was impact.
And so there's very few people in this world, and let alone the sports world, that can put the world in utter shock, disbelief, this feeling of stillness. Like when I found the news out, and I actually found the news out later than most, I was just
really. Tell me about that.
Oh my goodness, it was tell me about that. Just to kind of lead up the story, I actually broke my phone the day before, the screen on it, so the multi-touch didn't work. So that obviously wasn't good, but I was at work without a phone. And so I get off work and I'm trying to figure out, all right, how am I going to get my phone fixed? I'm using my sister's phone to call my friend to get a new one. And my sister goes, "Did you hear about Kobe?" And I was like, "What?" She said, and she handed me her phone and it was Twitter and it said Kobe Bryant was dead. And I was like, I'm not kidding, Davidson. I sat there and just kind of like tried to process this, and I was in disbelief. I was like, there's no way. I was in denial. I was like, there's no way, because it just is not fair. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and you encapsulated a lot of good things there as well. This is a man that claims I am the man that introduced him to the social medium known as Twitter. This is a man that I only remember fondly wearing 3 jerseys to school, one of the variety, one of the Sidney Crosby variety, and how the third one not be of the Kobe Bryant variety. He is part of his own podcast entity. He and my good friend Tino Vergels have got really good things going on. I've been on his podcast. He's a friend of the program. He is Blake Rodgers. Mr. Rodgers, how are we?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing better, I should say. I'll leave it at that. I'm doing better.
I guess I'll go ahead and bounce one off you about that right there. And this is a question I haven't asked anyone yet, but I feel like it might be necessary. And I hope you don't mind me asking, man. How did it cut? How deep did it cut, bro? How deep?
Bro, Well, let me take you through it. Sunday I was at work. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Sunday I was at work, and I get a call from like my manager called me. I was just like, "Hey," he paged me, I should say, and he was just hear about the news. I was like, "Well, what news? Like, what are you talking about?" Kobe. I'm like, "Yeah, he, LeBron passed him last night. What are you talking about?" No, he died. I'm like, "What? What do you mean died?" He was like, "He died in a helicopter crash." I'm like, "It's terrible," and it really didn't. I'm at work too, so I put like a brave face. You really can't. You can't be crying at work and being all emotional. So as soon as I got home, I literally watched the last game and against Utah, and I just started tearing up, dude. Like I probably cried at least like 3 times. It's just, especially he gave that speech at the end and think of Vanessa, and then you see little G, and then he says the Mamba out. It was emotional, man. It was emotional. So yeah, it cut pretty deep.
Yeah, man. I think it cut to a certain extent for anyone that really loves the game, especially because this is kind of an underrated aspect of what obviously has become not a senseless tragedy, but just it's hard to categorize what kind of tragedy it is, just because even though there were risks involved, and I've said to other people, and I'll say to you, the purpose of this podcast is not to go into the nuances of how and why the helicopter crashed, because nobody wants to hear that.
I agree.
But, it's hard to put a bow on the word tragedy, with an accompanying adjective. And by that, I mean senseless tragedy is guy walking into building in Virginia Tech and shooting up 12 people. That's a senseless tragedy.
Yeah.
Rich Eisen is a guy I listen to every single day almost. And I think he said it beautifully when he said, if you're one of those people that is just walking amongst life and have the audacity to come up to me, especially in regards to this, and just say, Rich, this is sad, but life's not fair. I don't want to hear it, because this is not fair. This is not fair. And that was something that like caused me to pause what I was doing and look up, and I was just like, that registered with me, because there are layers to the unfairness here, and obviously the family aspect of things really puts that dark cloud over it.
Yeah, and Rich. I love Rich. He's a composed guy. So for
my
him to
favorite,
show,
my favorite,
raw emotion like that and be straight up, I'm like, yeah, man. I don't even want to put. And I want to say another thing. And those trolls out there, just terrible.
What trolls?
People.
What
Dude,
trolls?
I've seen some trolls out there on the Twitter sphere, man. Just real insensitive. And I'm all about a good joke, but this is no joking matter. No. I seen one tweet. Somebody was like, well, Kobe has a lot of money. He'll, Vanessa will be fine. I'm like,
really?
Yes,
you saw
bro.
that? I never saw anything
that.
like that.
I saw it, man. And I'm just like, dude, money can't bring your family back. You lose your husband, since you were 17. And then you lose, your oldest daughter. I mean, money can never replace that. And to the other families as well. I know the coach, the male coach, he had 700 wins.
7 other
baseball.
People in Paris as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just, it's just an unfortunate series of events that I can't even fathom that the people are going through right now.
No, not even close. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I find myself now, and what I think is going to be so cool about this when this is done, speaking in present tense, is that every person I've talked to so far, the handful now, creeping up the double digits, everyone's brought their own unique perspective, and everyone has kind of had their own things to say. There have been a couple of tears, and I mean, hey, I shared a laugh with a couple of people over that exact speech you just talked about, where he mentioned everybody wants me to pass, or everybody wanted me to pass my whole career.
Right.
Why is tonight the exception?
Right.
I remember seeing that live and laughing my ass off, and I think all of that tied together, bow on top, under the Christmas tree, really says a lot about Kobe the human. And I'm glad that you and I have started off on that foot here, because Kobe the human, I don't think will ever be as revered, whether unfairly just or not, and obviously understandably so, as Kobe the basketball player. But he was about to do it after retirement better than anyone I think I'd ever seen. And that goes a long way.
I mean, most guys, they retire and they're like, okay, what do I do? With Kobe, he got straight to it. He did the Kobe Bryant detail, had that going on, just multiple things going on, coaching wise. And here's the thing with Kobe, it's like he wasn't real open for the most. You know what I'm saying, like, he wasn't as charismatic as you've seen now. And you always had passion, tenacity, love for the game. But let's not forget, when he first came into the league, he was a pretty, timid dude, and Colin Cowherd said he was real aloof, because he's an 18, 19-year-old kid. He couldn't get some
I thought he hit that on
bars.
the nail. I remember when Cowherd said that a couple of days ago. I thought he hit that right on the nail.
Yeah, and and there was a time where Kobe was a very polarizing figure, to say the least, and just to see him evolve, and that's life. You start somewhere and you keep evolving. You learn things. You talk to people. You grasp knowledge. And it just seemed like Kobe just made a huge transformation change, man. And not even the basketball aspect, but as a human aspect. And I look back and see all the money that he gave to charity and all the things he were doing. He just became such a likable person, a likable guy. You hear all these stories coming out. And I just thought it was great, man. And obviously that's probably might be the best final game of all time you see from a player.
One of. And
yeah.
And maybe the bushes where those hideous trolls live, they were coming out on that night too. Character trying to criticize him for, but he took 50 shots. Stop. I don't care. Hey, guess what? Are either of these teams going to be in the playoffs? No.
Yeah.
Like what? I felt like there was just that false sense of validity from so many people of a last 80-second regular season game that literally and justifiably so was all about Kobe Bryant, and he earned that. He earned it.
And here's my thing, too. I watched that game. I'm like, how did they win that game? They were down.
Oh, man.
First of all, that Lakers team only won 16 games that year.
Oh, they were awful.
That roster was bad. And Utah wasn't scrubs. They had Gordon Hayward and a couple guys. And they were winning the majority of the game. And then Kobe just went. He had 15 points straight in the final 3 minutes. Like, it's unheard of.
So you're probably sitting there the other night watching the replay. You watched the replay of it when they aired it on ESPN with Nick
I watched it.
Doing kind of ad-libbing. I'm sitting there watching it too, and the thoughts are creeping into my head as well. Like with five, I know that 3 minutes is when things take off. You and I both know that at this point, going into watching it. But I'm still sitting there thinking when is this gonna begin? When? Is it now? I even found myself knowing that the whole 15 points in 3 minutes thing was how that book unfolded. I even found myself 4 minutes just seeing him put up shots and expecting them to go in and just being like, so that's not where it started. It's really, it is really magnificent. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, man. I was the same. It's like I was watching it all over again. You knew they were going to win, but how they won, you just totally forgot.
Yeah.
And it's just wow, they really came back and he was classic Kobe, he was classic Mamba.
Totally. I want to bounce a couple of questions off you, man.
Yeah.
That kind of, I don't want, and I say this every time, if you have gotten this far into listening to this podcast, God bless you. I think I've been putting in some hours on this at this point, and I hope the work I do reflects, or I hope the quality of it reflects the work I did on it. So by saying all that, if you're hearing me ask this question for a 6th, 7th time, I apologize. However, I got to get these different perspectives because I think that's what's going to make this so unique. And so question number 1, I want to ask you, and again, disclaimer, tragic. Everything that has happened, tragic. You really can't put an adjective on, a woman who is now down a husband and a daughter, and let alone the other 7 people too.
Yeah.
You can't put an adjective on it. I say that, however, the page is going to turn at some point. The Lakers are going to play the Blazers on Friday night, okay? And the Lakers are going to play again, and they're going to play again, and they're going to play again. Have you, and I did not find myself thinking about this, obviously, because it wasn't of importance to me while I was still coping with the fact that Kobe is gone.
Yeah.
But after a couple of days, the thought began to creep into my head. Bro, what on God's earth is LeBron James going to do when he gets on that court? Like, what are we going to see from LeBron the rest of this season? I have no realistic expectation or idea at all. And, oh, man. Someone said this, too, and I thought it was brilliant. Remember how he said, Cleveland, this is for you. Tell me a perfect storybook ending is them not raising another banner and him saying, Kobe, this is for you.
I just got goosebumps. I just got chills just
I got
by you
chills
just saying
too.
that.
I got chills too. Cite my source. My man Travis Sanders just said that to me like 15 minutes ago. I didn't even think about it, and that gave me goosebumps thinking about it too, because it's crazy. It's crazy. Like, what?
Yeah.
Do you have any like realistic idea of what this man is going to do on the basketball court for the next few months?
Well, here's the thing, and LeBron has pretty much played point guard this whole season, LeBron has a weird way of getting his points, but it's real like he has 25, he has 27, explosive LeBron. And it's a weird way to put it because that sounds great, but you have to put it in reality. They already had expectations to win a championship this year. I think now there's more weighted pressure. It might be there is more weighted pressure to bring home a chip, due to the unfortunate events that happened. We have to keep in mind one thing, that LeBron is not. I know everybody brings up the Miami Heat Game 6 against Boston, with his eyes just ready, ballsing out, ready to go to war. I want the Lakers to go to the finals. I want them to win the championship. Jimmy Butler's balling for the Heat, but I think we have to temper expectations just because he's not that same 30-year, he's not that same dude anymore. The body, we don't know how the body's going to fold up. He had his first major injury last year. And I don't think that we should, per se, we're way to put it. I just think that we should be cautious, because LeBron's not going to be that same, but body-wise. I'm not saying he can't handle the load. If anybody can do it, it can be LeBron James, but I don't want people to, well, LeBron, this is your fault. It's like LeBron is, he's not going to have the same physical peak that he's had a couple of years ago. So the skill's still there, but I just hope that he doesn't put more pressure on himself that he should.
That's a very good point and a fair point. If I could just counter one thing, maybe it is the overall, health aspect of his body. Obviously, the fact that, yes, major injury last year for really the first time, it's astonishing, to be honest with you. Like, even Tom Brady couldn't say that. Tom Brady tore his ACL in week 1 against Kansas City Chiefs like 10 years ago. But if there's wear and tear from the 17-plus years of professional basketball LeBron has played, if there's wear and tear taking place, personally, I have not begun to see it yet.
That's fair. That's fair.
Muted myself. However,
I was like, what happened?
I've been at this for a while at this point.
I feel you.
However, I think there is something to be said about what you said. It's going to be there. Father Time's undefeated. And even if LeBron is ducking and dodging him maybe longer than anybody else we've ever seen, it's coming. And maybe I can go ahead and segue that into this question too, because I think this is a fascinating question. You remember when LeBron signed with the Lakers? And I think you and I both know people. We don't need to say names, and we're not fans of it. We're not fans of it, and it's understandable. I get it. It wouldn't be me if I was wearing yellow and purple. I would say, let's go, bring him here.
That's LeBron James.
That's just me, and that's just you and many other people's perspective. However, not everybody's like that. Maybe it's from a sense of having to argue against LeBron on behalf of Kobe for so long. The question really is this. Now that this just unspeakable and awful thing has happened, and maybe even has brought some sort of light into what Kobe and LeBron's relationship really was.
Yeah.
Do you think Laker fans and Laker Nation as a whole now looks at LeBron and or even respects LeBron a little bit differently than maybe before? And that's a completely unfair set of circumstances to raise that question to, but that's just the reality we live in right now.
I'm going to say this, man. I mean, now she brought that up, I just kind of had a flashback. Mm-hmm. Which player do you know, like in NBA history or whatever that matter, is the savior everywhere he goes? I mean, it's always a storyline, you know. Right. Cleveland, here's a abysmal city when it comes to sports. Just always having the worst luck. He was the savior for there, you know. And then Miami, he comes along. They're going through a weird patch. Dwayne Wade kind of passes the torch to LeBron. They went through championships in a row. And then he goes to LA. You know, you're already the legacy of Shaq, you know, Kobe, Wilt, Magic Johnson, Kareem. You can go on and on, you know. And that, you know, Lakers so many good players that he's kind of like a novelty. Like, okay, LeBron, we get it. You're great, blah, blah, blah. But he's still not Laker to us yet. Now he has this storyline where, you know, a Laker legend has passed away. And then now here you are to bring home a championship to kind of, you know, I want to say, I don't know the right word to say it, but to, you know, kind of bring a type of piece that this one is for you, Kobe. I never seen a player have so many storylines like this, man.
The polarizing, you know, figure aspect kind of plays into that. It's definitely not the most fair, you know, kind of entity for sake of debate or argument. But again, it is just reality. Last question from me, man, and I thank you a lot for bringing your perspective onto this. It's as unique as everybody else's, and you've raised just as many good points, if not more, as everybody else has. Last question that I'm going to leave you with, and it's in good jest.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one era of Kobe that you got to watch, number 8 or number 24?
Wow.
That's a tough one, man.
That is
it's a tough one.
Okay. I'm gonna say this.
Please.
Number 8 was the reason, you know, I started watching basketball. You know, I became a fan of basketball and just, you know, Afro Kobe. But when you get older, you know, when I got older, you actually like understand the game more. And then you just see the 24, him doing it without Paul Gasol. I mean, not Paul Gasol, with Paul Gasol, Andrew Bynum, Lamar Odom. We kind of, refine his game. But
those
in
are
the day,
huge
man,
for his legacy too. If I can throw that in there.
Huge. Yeah, no, I agree completely. But at the end of the day, man, I'm going with number 8. Shaq and Kobe will always, you know, live on, and you know that's the person, you know, that's the player I fell in love with, man. And rest in peace to Kobe Bryant, man, one of the greatest ever.
Absolutely. And dude, last thing I'll say, that was a moment that I cried. That was a moment. Yeah. There's a Shaq Kobe kind of intertwining that was. I cried like hours after I found out, scrolling through social media and seeing some of the incredible things people were posting. You knew that was coming.
Yeah.
But what made me, I was in Columbus this weekend with my brother. My brother was actually the one that told me while I was in the bathroom and I wasn't looking at my phone. And one of the things that really made me like wearing the hoodie on the couch, just like tighten it up, no one see my face, I'm going to let this out, was when I saw Shaq's son post the picture of the DM he got from Kobe the day of, in the morning. And there was
like a couple hours before.
Absolutely. And there was no prior conversation for months, even though Kobe and Shaq said time and time again. I mean, they basically treated each other all as cousins. Uncle Shaq, Uncle Kobe. That got me for sure.
Yeah.
Like it just Kobe reaching out to him out of nowhere. Obviously, for those that are in the well-know, Sharif O'Neal, his time at UCLA is going to come to an end for whatever reason or thereafter. He's going to be pursuing other opportunities to play basketball. That came out in the news earlier this week. Kobe, just out of absolutely nowhere, days after this surfaces, just like reaches out like, hey, man, you good? You all right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that got me for sure. Like, that got me for sure because it really encapsulates the very most important thing about Kobe's legacy to me is that you hear people say all the time, even though they don't really mean it, like, he was as good as a human being as he was a player on the court. Not true for a lot of people. Very true. Very, very true in this instance. I think that's what I'm going to remember Kobe as always. Man, I appreciate you very much so. Don't know why we've had this lengthy of an absence in terms of getting on the airwaves, but you know I'm always available at the drop of a hat, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, man. Appreciate having me on. Always good staying in touch. And best luck in your podcast, man. I can't wait to hear this episode.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot, brother. Joining me now, one of my good friends for a really long time. We go way back. Jefferson Elementary School, on the hardwood or on the blacktop, didn't really matter. But always a Laker fan nonetheless. My good friend Daniel Sandoval from Winona Lake, Indiana, the one and only. My friend, how are you today?
Good, and you?
I'm not doing too bad, man. I'm not doing too bad. We obviously we're here talking about a legend of the game, Kobe Bryant, someone who, will affect so many people's lives in so many people's ways on and off the basketball court. And, I sent you the predetermined questions, obviously, that we were going to go over, that I just wanted to ask you personally, just from a Laker fan perspective, a Laker diehard perspective, I must say. I can't even recall how many times I saw you wearing the purple and gold in school. So I thought it would be cool to get your perspective from it all. But, I want to start real quick back to a time where you and I couldn't even really comprehend anything. 96, one of the greatest drafts ever. Allen Iverson goes number 1 to the Sixers, and we all know how that turned out. He was Rookie of the Year. John Calipari's first real one-and-done kind of mastermind trick. Maybe not one and done. I can't remember off the top of my head. Regardless, Marcus Camby going number 2, and ironically enough, John Calipari bolting for the NBA as well. You had Marbury going 4th, Ray Allen going 5th, and this little kid from Lower Merion High School trickles all the way down to the Charlotte Hornets at 13, who, for some reason, felt like Vlade Divac fit their plans a little bit better. Nonetheless, Kobe Bean Bryant from Italy to the team that he idolized his entire life, by way of, a Vlade Divac covet. It's crazy to think about how the circumstance all happened. And when you put a bow, before I'll begin asking you, the questions you were prepared for, how could you even just as a fan of Kobe and knowing how that all took place, like, how do you even encapsulate just the fact that he was never supposed to be a Laker?
Mm-hmm.
He was never supposed to be a Laker. Like, do you think you would have been rocking Hornets gear this entire time?
I really don't see myself doing that just because of, Charlotte Hornets. They're such a small team, and then they're not as big as the Lakers, obviously. But I don't think Kobe's career would have been the same.
I agree with you.
I don't think it would be the same at all. And especially with, Michael Jordan owning it at one point and then even playing. No, he didn't play for them, no. But just, Kobe's career would be completely different.
It would absolutely have been a lot different, especially with, the in-haul of Shaq and, that'll be a topic I'll talk to a lot of guys about. But regardless, some of the questions I wanted to ask you, I mean, like, what was the moment when you were watching basketball at whatever age if you can recall, you can go ahead and say what age it was. Like, what was the moment where you saw Mr. Bean Bryant on the floor and you were like, that's the guy, man. Like, that's the guy he's the man. Like, what made you decide to follow Kobe and the Lakers as passionately as you did? Just that one time where you can remember.
So I was 11, and my dad was trying to get me into basketball. My dad grew up in the Magic Johnson era, and so he was a big Lakers fan growing up. And then obviously he was disconnected from the Lakers. He followed them a bit through the three-peat, but it was 2006, and it was when Kobe was on a scoring tear. It was the first game that my dad showed me ever was shortly after New Year's, and it was against the Clippers. And Kobe dropped 50 points. And I just remember sitting there watching. I had very little knowledge of basketball, but I knew like the shots and everything, and just how easy it was for him to score. And at that point, I'm like, hey, I can get behind this player, and I can
At
get
11
behind
years
the team.
old.
Yeah. And so that was 2 weeks before he scored 81. And so I got on the bandwagon right before an 81-point game. But it was at that moment. I was 11. It was against the Clippers. It was a very late game. And I stayed up so late watching Kobe score 50. And it was right there. I knew, okay, I want to be like him. I want to be the number one Kobe fan.
I'm glad you mentioned staying up late too, because that's something, we East Coasters seem to like lose in the myriad sometimes, is that because of the fact, obviously, with the time change out in LA, if you're a Kobe fan, and I can't tell you how many times I saw this on Twitter, if you're like a big Kobe kind of swear, for lack of a better term, you're staying up past 1 a.m. due to the time differences, and that just kind of adds to the fandom to make it even a little bit more better. Like, I got to ask you though, on the other side too, man. I mean, what if there was one thing about watching Kobe once you began to become acclimated and figure everything out far beyond, age 11, maybe around the time we met? Is there anything about watching Kobe that drove you nuts? Like, throughout any part of his career, is there anything that was just like, Kobe, come on, man, like that he did on a time and again basis?
Just how he got himself into trouble. Like, he would get double teamed, triple teamed, and then he wouldn't have, anywhere to pass it to, and then he'd just take crazy shots. And some would go in, and then some wouldn't. But when they went in, it's like, what the frick, Kobe? You're dumb. He could have passed it out to Gasol or Bynum or something, instead of having to chuck up a fadeaway over two people. And just his ability to do that, like, was awesome, but also like, dude, be smart and pass it out and get someone else. But
absolutely,
that just speaks to what he did on the court, and he was so passionate to score,
and facilitate towards the end of his career. I know, like, one of the things I'll remember most is when he had his mic drop after his last game, and he said, what's crazy, they were begging me to pass the ball my entire career, and now tonight they're telling me not to.
Yeah.
In kind of humorous jest. How about this one? Number 8 or number 24? If you could only pick one that you could have witnessed, which one would it be?
So I'll go with 24, only because that's the number I saw the most.
Gotcha.
But I did get to experience number 8 that season in 2006 of, outright score. But I think 24 was the one that made me fall in love with basketball, and just his hard work ethic, and, winning 2 championships without Shaq, and, being in the Celtics after having been beat in 2008, and then he beat them in 2010. And so just, 24 was definitely my favorite.
One moment that you can pick. I'm sure there's a boatload of them. I'm a Thunder fan. I didn't even have an NBA team that I could lay claim to my favorite since around the time I moved to Warsaw when the Supersonics packed up and left for Oklahoma City. So I have like little bits of pockets of moments that I could choose from. Man, as a Kobe Bryant and Laker aficionado such as yourself, there are so many different moments to pick and choose from, but only have one. Your all-time favorite moment from Mr. Bean Bryant would be what?
This one's really hard because there were so many moments. But if I had to pick one, it would be his last game, and only because he went out as he would want to go. Like, that was Kobe, scoring 60 points on his last game ever. And I actually watched the re-air last night, and just how freaking tired he was. He gave it his all that game, and that's what he did his whole career. He gave it his all. And so that's probably my all-time favorite, just because it was like the perfect way to end the career.
Absolutely. That's one of my all-time favorite, really, sports moments too, let alone outside of Kobe. On Sunday morning when the news came down, how'd you find out?
I was with my wife and her parents, and we were just sitting talking about life, talking about how short life is and how, anything can happen. And then a friend texts me and he's like, "Hey, did you hear about Kobe? What the fuck? Like, what happened?" And so I'm like, "I don't know." And so then I hopped on Twitter and I follow a butt ton of LA pages, and they were all talking about it, and they're like, "This can't be real. This is fake." And it felt like a fake celebrity death, like, because I was not expecting it, and then I just broke down.
Right.
Like, it once it was confirmed, it was like, yeah.
No, it took me a while to figure out or accept that it was real either. It was when I saw that the Calabasas Sheriff Department just tweeted that there was a crash.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh man, that this could be real. However, there will be plenty of time and plenty of ordinance to go through all of the ins and outs of what was truly a terrible tragedy. You and I are here, just like many of the other people that are going to be on my podcast, to celebrate, not only his life, but his career as well, and how he touched and impacted the game. I want to thank you a lot, man, for coming on and talking to me about it. However, I got one more question for you. A legacy can be defined by a lot of things, but Kobe Bryant's legacy, maybe as a player, even more so a human being, a family man, a father, so many things. He was phenomenal when he put his hands on it. But if you had to define his legacy, just in your words, what do you think it would be?
It would be that hard work pays off. He worked harder than anyone on and off the court. And even after retirement, he worked hard. He won a Grammy with his basketball short film.
And an Oscar, yeah.
Yeah. But like, especially being a dad man, like he worked hard with his daughters, with his family. And I think that just sticks out to me, because I know at one point his marriage was going to crap, but he worked hard and he made it work, and then, started a beautiful family. And so that to me just defines his legacy. Hard work pays off, and yeah.
I'm going to throw you one more question that I didn't send you beforehand, but just popped in my head. I think it's a really good question, and then I'll let you go, my man. In a weird way, now that LeBron James, who a lot of people considered, as El Diablo, the villain, from the Kobe side of things.
Yeah.
Does all of this happening, and or maybe before this even happened for you, is there a greater, maybe depending on what he does this season, do you sense that maybe there's a greater sense of appreciation, or maybe a greater sense of welcoming from not only just yourself, but Laker Nation as a whole for LeBron James?
I think so. Just him, he chose the Lakers when no one wanted to come, and when we were crap.
That says a lot too.
Yeah, and so the fact that he stuck around, tried getting AD, which worked out, and just his post yesterday, like, he really put it into good words, saying that he's gonna do it for Kobe, like he's gonna put it on his shoulders. And so I think that'll bring a lot of appreciation to him and to what he means to the game. And I just think we're gonna get a different LeBron now that this happened. He's gonna want to win a championship for Kobe.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think with the Lakers being as scary as the proprietors they are, man, they turned into quite the frightening entity now, all things considered. Danny, I'd like to thank you, man. I appreciate your perspective. Is there anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I just thank you for letting me talk and giving me this opportunity to share my memories and stuff about Kobe.
As the carousel continues to circle, now joined by a man that is a man of many things. He is a man that wore alarmingly bright yellow button-downs at one point. He is a man that can be found now strolling the sidelines of high school football fields, giving back to the sport that he so loved when he was that age. He is a man that, yes, indeed, while I try to share my screen, as best as I can, having never done it before. He is a man that, thanks to Kobe Bean Bryant, lost this one bet. Tell me if you could see it, man. Can you see it?
I can see it, yeah.
Can you see it? Then the audience will too. All right, so context. That is my jersey that I obviously no longer own. There's a 6-letter last name on the back and the number 35. I think people can use their imagination. It was just a simple bet of Lakers versus Thunder in a playoff series that just so happened to come along the timeline. That this man was my student teacher in social studies, and this man is a man that I will not spend any more time introducing. He is a very good friend of mine, though. I'm really happy to have him on the podcast right now. This is Dane Franklin. My man, how are we?
I'm doing well, Davidson. I really appreciate you having me, and this is really cool. This is awesome. I've been looking forward to it all day.
Why couldn't we have done it though when I tried to forewarn you about the incoming Damian Lillard? I know you've always given me credit about that for calling that.
You know what? I don't know. You know, I whenever I think of Damian Lillard, I always stop and think to myself, Davidson called that when that dude was in college, and I think I'm more impressed that I remember that. But
that is very true. But you just said to me before we started recording too, you were just watching film, getting ready for something. My disease that I have contracted just by being alive, and by disease I mean just an overwhelming love for anything that keeps score, as I finally take this screen sharing thing off. Just wanted to throw that out there at the beginning. However, I bring that up because of the fact that I watch tape just to get these opinions. I don't watch tape like you did tonight. You said you're getting ready for Central Catholic on Monday. And while this is irrelevant to the general point of this conversation, always share an affinity for the greater things in sports and the greater reasons of why we develop such opinions in sports. And that's what brings us to the topic, obviously, on a lot of people's minds. And a lot of people's, emotions are running high for so many different people. And the coolest thing, again, I apologize if you've listened this far, because I've now said this maybe 9 or 10 times, but everybody's perspective is so unique, and I think that's what makes it so cool. So let's get yours. Can you remember when you first became introduced to Kobe Bean Bryant, born in Italy, drafted by Charlotte, traded for a Vlade Divac affinity, Kobe Bean Bryant? Could you remember when you first saw him on TV or whatever, and a moment that made you go, yeah, okay, that's my guy?
You know, as bad as it sounds, I don't remember the moment. I grew up in a football house. Football was always on all the time.
Of course.
And
you're not the only one that said that, by the way, too. So don't feel.
Shockingly enough, my dad played basketball. He played at Rodgers. He dressed varsity as a sophomore. And, as much as I know he played and worked on his game, he really didn't watch a whole lot of basketball when I was growing up. So my earliest basketball memories were always the finals. I would stay up late. Obviously, we were out of school. I would stay up and watch the game down in the living room. And my earliest recollection of the Lakers was Kobe and Shaq, their runs in the finals and watching them be electric. And I don't know exactly what it was about Kobe, but I was not a fan of a basketball team until I watched the Lakers and Kobe Bryant. And it wasn't Shaq. Shaq was already – we knew who Shaq was when I was a kid. He was Orlando Magic. So the fact that Kobe started his career in Los Angeles and, immediately just skyrocketed. I don't know exactly what it was, but I was hooked. Those championships that they won, and they were always on in the summer. Deep playoff runs, and after that, I was like, I'm gonna roll with the Lakers, because when I was growing up, it was I wanted to be the best at whatever I did, and I picked the best teams. That's why I catch a lot of flack, because of being a Lakers fan, being a Cowboys fan, a Yankees fan.
How's Carolina working out for you?
Oh.
Hey man, I'm as disappointed as you are that I haven't gotten my Cole Anthony fix this year like I wanted to. I picked him preseason player of the year coming into the year. He looked the part. Unfortunate that team's been ravaged by injuries. So there's a pass on that front.
Yeah.
However, one thing that I want to go back to that you said that I think a lot of people don't, give as much credit to in terms of what kind of impact he had. If you're living on the East Coast and it's a regular season, you're staying up. You are losing sleep just to watch this man bounce a round ball off of a court and, time and time again put it in a hole. It's and what's also crazy about it is you say that, and rightfully so, the Lakers was his one and final home for 20 years. Whether there were trade requests to go to Detroit, there was a split-second moment away from that not happening. Before, like I said in the beginning, Charlotte, for some weird reason, saw Vlade Divac and we want him instead. Okay. But at the end of the day, you get a lot of differing opinions on what the impact of Kobe's career would have been had he never been traded, had he been a Hornet. And I think the allure, and especially obviously a 7'3" man that goes by one name walking into the franchise the same exact year, that didn't hurt. But, Kobe was somewhat aloof when he got into the NBA, timid, quiet, an 18-year-old that was growing up in front of our very eyes. And I think that's where a lot of people can, resonate with a lot of things you just said.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard the other day that, when they were talking about had he stayed in Charlotte, he very likely would have went without a championship, not one. Maybe think of Kevin Garnett, in Minnesota before he went to Boston.
Right.
There's so many guys that worked so hard and had great careers, but didn't have the rings to show for it. And I certainly think if he doesn't go to Los Angeles, he probably if he stays in Charlotte, he doesn't have any. He ends up with zero at the end of his career. But I think the thing that I enjoyed the most was, through all those down years, watching him get back there at the biggest stage and come away with two more before he ended up, walking away, which obviously he played for quite a few more years after that. But to be able to do it without Shaq, that was huge for me personally, because, as a Lakers fan, that's all you ever hear.
Right.
Is, he's not going to get another one. He's not going to get another one.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did he get one, he got two. So
those are the same people that are asking you why he didn't get one with Huertas and Robert Sacre. Those people, whatever with those people. Regardless, though, and to say everything you just said, not trying to divulge way too off topic, but what do you think that says about a guy like Joe Thomas, who is all pro almost every year? He had the 1 year with Derek Anderson that had that shot in the needle 10-6 and never won more than 6 games another year of his career. That could have very well been Kobe Bryant in Charlotte. It really could have been.
Absolutely. And here's the deal. I have a tremendous amount of respect for those kind of guys, because you're around a losing culture. But just coming into work and grinding every day at the highest level is there's a lot to be said about that. And I think that was what I enjoyed the most about Kobe. He obviously had a tremendous amount of success with Shaq. We know that. But when they started comparing him to LeBron after LeBron left to go to the Heat, that is what drove me insane, was that, hey, LeBron's a great guy. We know that. He's a family guy. But Kobe stayed home, and Kobe rode out those tough years. LeBron took the easy way out. I'm sorry, he did. And hey, he worked his tail off and got his rings and came back to Cleveland, did the right thing, and this, that, and the third. But that's what drove me insane about, when they started those comparisons. Kobe stayed home. He was loyal. And in this day and age, especially in the NBA now, are we ever going to see a guy like Kobe stay home?
20 years.
Correct. I mean, look at these guys bouncing around now. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, the NBA, whether that's a culture problem or, people kind of call the NFL. People criticize the NFL and tag it as the no fun league. There are a lot of locked in contracts that try to incentivize those contracts where you're really and honestly stuck with incentives and guaranteed money. Every dollar of every NBA contract is guaranteed. Every dollar. And I think that has a lot to be said about the flowing of everybody that's going. I will say this, though. Kobe did at one point in time and has admitted, did request a trade. He obviously changed his mind. Because I think if Kobe Bryant wants a trade, what are you going to tell him? No. Obviously, he did change his mind. There was a trade that was on the table and almost ready to be finalized to send him to Detroit in the mid-2000s. But, you know, there's a lot of things, and we talk about it with every single person I've had on here. There's just so many different examples you could point at, from Exhibit A to Exhibit C to exhibit letters that only exist in space, about what made him different. There's so many. And what sticks out to me more than anything, again, apologize if you've heard me say this time and time again, and I love you for listening this far. However, what I'll always remember Kobe as is there has not ever been another human being, and I say human being for a reason, that has ever, obviously now with the tragedy that's happened, we'll never really know, but he looked every bit of the part of a guy that was going to shine in Act 2 when a whole lot of other guys did the opposite and did it the right way. And not only that, his marriage was not looking great at one point in time. Guess what he did? He dug his nose in the ground and said, I'm not giving up. There's a lot to be said about Kobe the human, and that's why I kind of highlight that per se. For you, in your perspective, going from when you decided you were rolling with the Lakers and the affinity for Kobe and what have you, given everything that's happened, from the final game against the Jazz to obviously now where the mood is incredibly somber and things are so, still kind of unbelievable. Maybe not one word, but how do you personally, how are you going to remember this guy? There are so many answers for this question, and this question does sound cliche, but I think it's important to ask because of the endless amounts of answers you could give. Your answer would be what?
It's easy. And I talked to my kids about this on Monday at school. It's his drive. You know, it's easy. Here's the deal. We all know Kobe, the basketball player. People that don't watch basketball know Kobe as the basketball player. I'm going to miss his work ethic, man. I mean, the guy, I learned more about Kobe Bryant long after he put a basketball up and stopped playing that made me just gain so much more respect for him as a human. You know, he gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning. He goes and trains from 4 to 6. He comes home. He eats. He takes a shower. He goes back for practice or another training session, give or take, whatever you want to put in there, from 9 to 11. Comes home, he eats lunch. He does it again. And then he does it 3-4 times a day. And he does that for 20 years with the mindset of, if I do this now, and everybody's heard this story, right? If I do this now and people find out about it 4 to 5 years later, there's no way they're ever going to catch up. It's impossible. And to do that for 2 decades, playing at the highest level, the wear and tear on your body to put yourself through that, to stay focused, I mean, that's unbelievable. That is, and that's what the point that I try to get across to students, and something that our country and the world needs to take away from Kobe. Success is not how smart you are. It is you're standing and you look to your left and you look to your right. Are you working harder than those people? And there are very few people in my life that I can say, you know what, that person works harder than I do. And I know for a fact with you, whatever you dive into, whether it be music, whether it be your podcast, whether it be your covering MMA, that not a lot of people work harder than you, and not a lot of people work harder than Kobe Bryant. And that's all it is. Unfortunately, we live in a world of mediocrity where a lot of people, they want all of these things, but they're not willing to put in the work.
And they're willing to criticize them on the back end too from a keyboard.
Correct. And that's what I'm going to remember about him. And hopefully, in addition to, I mean, what a legacy left. You know, how are we affecting other people? You know, how are we serving the world? And just hearing all of these stories from people that he talked to. I mean, we all know the interview that the ESPN, forgive me, I don't remember her name, but it just came out on Twitter yesterday about, you know, the girl dad thing. I mean, how long was that conversation? 15 minutes max?
Yeah. Max.
What an impact. You know, that's what I remember about Kobe. It's not about basketball. It's not. It's about what are you doing to serve the world? And goodness gracious. And like you said, yeah, his marriage wasn't pretty. How easy is it for him to be on his third or fourth wife? That's the easy thing to do. No, what he did was, like you said, he put in the work.
To give up or fix it.
Yeah.
Give up or fix it.
Correct. That's what I remember most about him.
And the best part of the just dozens of pockets of brilliance that you just conveyed, and also a very touching thing that you said about me that I really appreciate. You say that if you echo this to your classmates, and for those listening right now, that this man right here teaches the youth of America. Who says the youth of America is not in good hands? I call them liars. Unless they maybe don't go to start high school, then I might back off a little bit. But a perfect way, just God forbid, somebody in that classroom raises their hand and said, "Nah, not buying it. Prove it." You know what you know what clip you could pull up? Tears his Achilles. They're bringing out the cart. They're bringing out, and he like looks at him like, what are you doing? And they're like, "You can't walk." He's like, "I can't walk." Bet. Swish, get that card out of my face. Walks to the locker room. I'm clearly lost for words, and that is something I'll never forget. Seeing that on SportsCenter and just looking at that and truly understanding one encapsulated picture of what made him great, just right there in a moment that a lot of people saw as a turn for the worst. I didn't see it like that, though. And obviously the context given for many years prior helps that fact. But when I saw that, I was just like, yeah, dude, that's what makes this guy different. That right there. It's cliche to call athletes different. You and I don't know what your opinion would be on Lamar Jackson, but he's different in so many ways, and he's about to win the MVP of the NFL on Sunday night in Miami. And he's different in a lot of ways. Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, could go down as the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. I think he's well on his way.
Yep.
They're different levels of different. Confusing sentence. True words.
I got you.
Confusing sentence, but true words. And man, so many exhibits and so many times and times again, it's just mesmerizing, whether it had to do with basketball or not.
Well, here's the deal with the Achilles. I mean, everybody, you remember it. Everybody thought that was it. Kobe's done.
Yeah.
And
did you?
Oh man, I questioned it. I won't even lie to you. I was curious. I wasn't sure.
How could you not question it, man?
No, I thought I will say this. I thought if he came back, he'd be not nearly what he was, and once again, what does he do? He just puts in the work, just does his rehab, does whatever, and puts in that work and comes back, and he's just still Kobe, like it wasn't nothing.
Couple of questions that I definitely want to bounce off you, and then I'll let you go. Definitely, whether it is because I've always had a soft spot in my heart for this man or not, this is definitely one of my favorite segments, as expected, of a lot of really good ones. And some pretty touching ones. But before we do depart, I'm going to bounce two questions off you. One coming from something you've already brought up, the comparisons to LeBron James, whether, albeit unfair or not. When LeBron James arrived in LA, or even before that, when Woj tweeted that this something that we all expected, I know that I completely expected that to be what was going to happen. And when it finally did happen, mixed emotions is probably the most somber way to put how Laker fandom was, because you're just sitting there like, I got to defend my guy Kobe to prop him over LeBron for all these years, and now I got to see him wear my colors. It brings me to this question to ask you, and it's good that you're a Laker fan because you can offer a different perspective from it. Now that this just unthinkable, horrible thing has happened, I mean, not only to Kobe and Gianna, but the 7 other people that perished too. Now that this has happened, whether it be fair or unfair, and whether this question is fair in its own right, does Laker Nation now, knowing a little bit more about LeBron and Kobe's relationship and having LeBron a part of that fraternity now, whether people like it or not, do you think Laker Nation looks at LeBron any differently, whether it is fair or unfair to ask that question, given what's happened?
I would say the majority of Laker fans, with the success that's been had this season, he probably turned, some significant percentage of those fans that, maybe still held a grudge or felt some type of way about him. I mean, here's the deal, when I got the news, and like you said, we all knew it was coming.
Oh, yeah.
It's just once it happens, it's more concrete, and you're like, wow, this is all right, here we go. I was excited, because you know what LeBron brings to the table. He's going to get a guy, and obviously they got, it wasn't the first year, but they got Anthony Davis, and it just made watching them more exciting. And obviously with the injury last year that, to LeBron, that was pretty much knocked him out of the playoffs. But he secures Laker Nation in its entirety with a championship, plain and simple.
And here's another potentially unfair question I'll bounce off you. And I have said, again, apologize for this repeated question. This is going to sound a little bit insensitive, given the fact that we're barely 72 hours removed from something that's happened. However, you and I both know that having a grip on reality is almost as important as living in reality. And the reality is, man, I could sit here and do a million of these segments. I could sit here and create just the greatest Kobe Memoriam podcast made from a random guy's Dell laptop ever. The reality is the page has got to turn at some point. The Lakers are going to play the Blazers on Friday night, whether they like it or not. They're going to have to play again, and they're going to have to play again, and they're going to have to play again, all the way to the playoffs. So whether this question does sound insensitive, and my intention is not to take attention off of this awful thing that's happened, but I do think it is a fair question to ask. Good Lord, what on earth is LeBron James going to be capable of when he steps on that court? I've gotten mixed answers. I truly have no idea. I have no clue. I do not know what to expect. What say you?
I say that it's been very interesting watching the sports world and all of these things that have happened in the last few days revolving around Kobe. The memorials, the stories. I think that just goes to show you whatever it is that everybody that listens to you believes in. It just goes to show you the impact that he had on the world. So just real quick, and I don't mean to take up too much time. On Monday, we're playing Lima Senior. Okay. And Lima Senior, historically, girls basketball varsity program is run very efficiently. They're rock solid.
They are a solid program.
You have got to prepare for them. And, with that being said, junior varsity and the freshman programs, unfortunately, they struggle at times and historically do. So we go down there and we're playing. And second quarter was, a little rough for us. We expected to get out ahead pretty big, without much issue. But, they played hard. And it was an 11-point ball game at halftime. And we come out in the third quarter and make a big run. And, fortunately for us in the fourth quarter, we were able to start pulling some players. So we pull our highest scorer first. And she comes off the floor. And she never does this. She looks at me and she says, "Am I going back in?" And never, ever, ever do I ever put anyone back in that wants to chase points. It's not worth it. What if you get hurt? Whatever. So I said, absolutely not. You're not going back in. She goes, I want to score 24. So I pause and I look at her and I said, how many do you even have? So if you have like 16, you're not going back in.
You would react like that. I'm envisioning this happening. I really am.
She goes, I got 21. I'm like, so I said, go sit down. And, the game's going on. We got about 3-4 minutes of real time that passes, about a minute of game time that passes. And in my head, I'm like, how do I not put this girl back in?
You can't.
Then it dawns on me, she's number 24. So obviously, she loves Kobe, right? So I turn around, and she is staring through my soul so
Good
hard.
Lord, my friend.
I felt like she could see my deepest, darkest secrets in this moment, right?
Got to send her to the scores table right away.
Right. So
Absolutely.
I turn back around. Lima tips the ball out of bounds. It's our ball, baseline under our basket. I turn around. I said, go. So we run a play, easy double stagger screen, coming around the backside for her to set up for a three, right? So we call the play. She takes the ball out. She throws it in. She comes around the corner, and I am not joking. As soon as she caught the ball, she didn't even get into her shooting motion. And in my head, I was like, there's no way this ball doesn't go in.
No way.
It has to go in. Why would it not go in?
It'd be impossible not to go in.
And sure enough, shot goes up and splash.
Yanker immediately, right?
Oh, I called timeout right away. Sprinted right up to the baseline, right up to the
Definitely the best story I've heard so far, no doubt. That is unbelievable. You said I want 24, and you're just like, well, okay, I get it, but how many do you have? She's got 21. Oh man, how do you not do that?
Yeah,
that is unbelievable, though.
Yeah,
wow,
so
I feel like I just envisioned it all in my head too. That was wow.
Her mom tweets out. She's got a picture of her when she was like 8 years old, in a Kobe jersey with the hat on, purple beads, and Kobe's favorite player. Yeah, right. So just an unbelievable moment. But just to circle back to answer your question, I really expect Friday night to be one of those stories that we talked about for years. I expect Brett Favre on Monday night after his dad passed away. I expect, just that type of a story. Was it? And I'm not a baseball guy, but wasn't it the Marlins? They had a player pass away.
Those are two very shining examples. The Brett Favre one, obviously, just going out on Monday night against a team at that time, the Raiders, better on paper. It just said, screw this, man. This one's for Pops. But that all being said, there is something to be said about that D. Gordon home run. You don't know how many times he had hit a home run in the past. We're talking a everyday shortstop, Major League Baseball player who, as you can clearly tell by where I'm going with this, did not have a job in Major League Baseball for his ability to hit it over the fence. First pitch he sees. See ya. I remember seeing that and just being like, or here's another example. The Angels last summer. The Angels after, and the circumstances of an untimely death of Tyler Skaggs was his name. But they threw a no-hitter the very next day. They took the diamond. I would put that story that you just told, though, amongst all of that, especially because me knowing you, I just played the whole thing out in my head. I feel like I just saw the whole thing that you just described all out in my head. And the way you described it, too, of how could it not go in? How could it not? How?
Yeah.
Wow.
And obviously that's the easy thing to say, knowing what happened afterwards. But right hand to God, that was my thought as it was developing, and as she caught it, I'm like,
yep,
it's gonna go in. Like, how does it not?
Of course.
Yeah. So
and Trey Young having 45 on a triple double, and I think people went a little far with combining he and Booker's points together. I was like, okay, but Trey Young was actually Gigi's favorite player, and a guy that I would have went to high school with, believe it or not, Norman North High School. Had I never left had I never left Oklahoma.
No kidding.
Yep. Norman North High School was the school district I lived in. Went there from Indiana, and he would have been in my brother's class, obviously playing varsity as a freshman. And I expected him to commit to Oklahoma. As a result, I knew Kentucky and Kansas were going to be right there, and they always were. But I watched film on him from when he was in 8th grade. I just so happened to be at the game where he broke, just visiting my dad. He said, "Hey, you want to go watch OU beat Northwestern State by 40 tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And Trae Young just so happened to have 22 dimes. And that was Gigi's favorite player. I think a lot of knowledge is being passed down about the game when someone that young can identify someone who is still kind of bursting on the scene. He's an all-star starter, which is miraculous, but identifying him as her favorite player. You see him coming out with the 8, and we could go on for so long. However, unfortunately, I believe our time is about up. And my man, really appreciates you coming on. Another amazing perspective and a unique one nonetheless. You got anything else you want to add?
Hey, man, just, obviously it's always good to talk to you. And I really appreciate you taking the time to hear my thoughts and everything. And,
you took your time, bro. I've been doing this all day. You took your time.
I just want to tell you that I'm really, really proud of you, man. I know that you bounce around in different aspects of the entertainment world. And, one of the things that I know about you is whatever you do, you kill it. You do, because you work really, really hard. And, you tell that story about you would have went to high school with Trae Young. And I'm really glad that you didn't, because I wouldn't know you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And feelings obviously mutual. In abundance, my man. I'll go ahead and let you get back to your life, your new house, new reality, and one that obviously you more than deserve. Appreciate you giving me your time, my man. Your time.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. And you ever come back up to Toledo, we got a spare bedroom with your name on it anytime you need it.
I'm ready for it, man. I was just in Columbus this past weekend with my brother, celebrating his birthday, so I'm definitely sure that I'm going to be back in Toledo at some point as far as visiting, no doubt.
Good deal. Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Have a great rest of your night, man.
Yeah, you too.
I'll just go ahead and ask you this. Mm-hmm. Someone said this earlier, and it made me think, damn, I wish I asked this as a question to people, because it's a thought-provoking one. You hate to ask something like I kind of already have, just in wake of such a tragedy. However, do you think the unfortunate, to say the least, circumstances that have now become reality, bottom line, man, do you think all this shit now puts the Kobe and LeBron comparison war? Do you think that shit's been put to bed at this point?
Someone
asked me that, and I was just like, that's a really good question.
No, that is a good question. That is a good question. And I think it's for me, what I would say is we got to stop comparing and just start looking at how great these individuals are,
that's what I say.
They are.
That's what I say.
We got to stop comparing these guys and these guys, because at the end of the day, it's different eras. You can't even compare Kobe or Jordan and LeBron. You can't compare, different eras, different play. So at the
you
end
ever find
of the
it
day,
funny that go ahead, finish. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, at the end of the day, I think I don't think people are gonna be comparing now, but people are human, and they're still gonna do what they do and compare. At the end of the day, it might take some time till they bring that conversation back up, but I can't imagine people's not comparing. But like I said, we just got to start looking at the greatness of these individuals.
That's the cloth I'm cut from, bro. You hear all the time people say oh, I hate the Patriots. Oh, I hate Tom Brady. I hate Bill Belichick. But it's just why? And on top of that, do you dislike history? Do you dislike greatness?
I'm gonna be real with you. I was definitely that guy. I think you remember me. I used to be fuck LeBron, fuck we were just talking about.
So crazy.
There was always that comparison. Me, I'm Kobe this, Kobe that. So you talk about another person, especially LeBron. I used to say I hated that dude, and I don't hate him. It's just I don't know, because this dude is such a great player, like Tom Brady. People, like you said, they say they hate Tom Brady, but at the end of the day, it's just because they're so good as a player that you kind of like feel this hate towards them. But like you said, it's a different time, and I can't feel like that. I just respect. I have all respect for these dudes. Like, they're out there playing for us and entertaining us and working hard. So I respect what they do.
Yeah, man, and that's, you and I are cut from that cloth together. I couldn't agree with you more. And in a sense, you ever find it funny how, like, when you try to say that, what you just said to people about comparing people from different eras,
Mm-hmm.
it could really go by any sport except maybe baseball, I guess, because baseball hasn't changed all that much. Not compared to football. True. Not compared to football and basketball. It's certainly changed, but definitely not compared to football, and definitely not compared to basketball. And do you find it funny that, like, some dudes will try so hard to have that conversation that when you speak that into existence, we tell them, bro, like, these are two different games. They just, like, look at you like you spoke Ebonics. Like, what?
No, they're not reflective.
This dude's better.
They don't understand.
It's like, dude, it's not even worth it.
No, literally. And that's when it's like, all right, I'm gonna let you have your opinion, because at that point, it's like they say, you can't fight with somebody stupid, because at the end of the day, you'll never win.
or bro, you'll lose IQ points.
Exactly.
Maybe a little bit of both.
Exactly.
Couple more questions, and then I'll let you go on out of here, bro.
Okay.
So first of all, we'll ask you the hard one. You're standing in the Lakers huddle, envision this, and you just so happen to be, whether it's in a dream or what have you,
mm-hmm.
the decision maker at any capacity for the Los Angeles Lakers. It's Game 7 of the Finals. It's 97-96. Lakers are down 1 point. 5 seconds to go on the clock. You have 4 of your guys out there on the floor. You turn around and you have 2 to choose from to be your 5th guy. One of them is Kobe wearing number 8. The other one is Kobe wearing 24. Who are you putting on the floor and why?
I'm easily putting in number 24, man. Like, if it's
easily
easily.
Really?
If it's last second, this is Kobe 24, who was number 8.
Mm-hmm.
Number 8 Kobe doesn't know what it's like to be number 24.
That's interesting.
Number 24 has gone through this. Number 24 has gone through this process 1,000 more times than number 8 has. Number 24 is on the court after every practice playing this same thing that you just told me. He's playing that in his head. So
over and
number
over.
24 Kobe can do what number 8 Kobe could do, except maybe he wasn't as athletic, but like you said, it's the final point. Shit, Kobe's doing what he does. He's Kobe. So number 24.
Little more seasoning, little more flavor.
I'm gonna say easily number 24.
Easily. Interesting. I don't disagree with you. I think, in my opinion, I think it's I think I'd lose sleep if I think I made the wrong decision. But
100%.
regardless, man. We talked at the beginning, and it's fitting to close it out the same way, talking about, what we remember about people, especially those that seem, as you touched on multiple times, larger than life and in a sense invincible. I don't think that a majority of people like you and I that are in the know to a reasonable degree are ever going to really fully process that this is real still. But, it may sound cliche, but legacy, the word legacy, when thinking about the Italian-born, picked by the Charlotte Hornets, for some reason swapped for an affinity to Vlade Divac, that's just the beginning. And then you have the entire chronological order that comes after it, which then creates said legacy. What are you going to remember, bro?
It was destiny. It was destiny.
Everything.
I'm just going to remember, literally, I'm just going to remember, seeing this young-ass kid, man, young-ass kid who was cocky, but he was cocky for a reason. And I'm I can respect cockiness if you can back it up, and that's what Kobe did from the beginning of when he came to the league to when he ended, and that dude is one of the hardest workers and like hardest workers I've ever seen on television, on media, on anything. I've never seen anybody work as hard as that dude. And you'll hear from his teammates. You'll hear from people he didn't even play with. You'll hear from everybody. Kobe was one of the hardest working, and not even on the field. I'm talking about on and off. So
right.
When you can have people who don't even know you crying for you all across this country, like pouring out their hearts for you and talking about you as not just a basketball player, but as a man, you know you did something and you know you left, like you said, a legacy. So
a pretty damn good one too. Gene, it's been my pleasure, brother.
Bro, it's my pleasure, and you know, like to everybody, to all the fans, to all the basketball fans, to all the basketball players, like to just humans, like you said, let's stay in the present. Like we worry so much about the future and we worry about this and that, but let's take time to say thank you and love ourselves and love the people around us. So
absolutely,
that's all I can say. And I love you, man. It's
I love
been
you
a while,
too, bro. It's been way too long.
You, bro.
It's been way too
Oh,
long,
God.
man. It's
Shit.
been
Like,
I told Demetrius about it, about me and Eli hooking back up next week. Something's got to be in the cards at some point, bro. At some
100%,
point,
100%.
at some point, we all got to get back into maybe temper it back a little bit. But
yeah. You know. Shit,
shout out to Megan the RA, and pleased to be catching up with a really good friend of mine, an old friend of mine, from same kind of the walk that Eli from Freehold was on earlier. This man right here is a man that was roommates with us in the hallowed 1505 dormitory. That man is Jean-Luc Poulard, coming from Connecticut. Did I botch that, bro? Just like you can tell me if I.
Yeah, I don't lie, so I'm gonna be real honest. And you said that shit right. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
My guy, I appreciate you for having me. Like, you know, this is an honor, and this man, you know, that I looked up to, it's only right that I talk about him and share how I felt. So thank you.
I wish to elevate as best as I can, and I'm gonna push the hell out of this to try to get a lot of people's, you know, inner thoughts and feelings, while they may be difficult ones out there about this. So you and I, as we go ahead and begin our conversation, and I will say to you, everybody's and you'll hear it when you listen to the whole thing, everybody's perspective is uniquely different in a certain way. However, you match kind of the mold that a couple other people's do, or other people, other people's. Regardless, you know, you're one of the guys that, and everybody knows a guy, everybody knows people, everybody knows these types of individuals that at some certain point in time in their lives, whether it was looking up on a screen or seeing a video game or a poster, just in an instantaneous moment, saw whether it was 8 or 24 in purple and gold and declared in that moment, that's my guy. And
yeah.
I'm not even looking back. Do you remember what moment that was at all? Or has it just always been the norm? Or is there like a distinct moment you remember?
So I guess it's kind of like there's kind of a background story to it. So
please tell it.
You know, I'm Haitian, so I was born in Haiti. So coming here, I think I came here in '99. So I came here, you know, the Haitian culture is a lot of soccer. So all I knew was soccer when I came from Haiti. But my brothers were already living here for a little, and they're older than me. So they were watching basketball. So they introduced me to basketball. And, you know, they're Lakers fans, like they're Kobe fans. So I'm watching Kobe. That's all I knew since I came here. And of course, the next year, 2000, he won his first championship. So it's just like basketball was my new sport. Like that's all I knew when I was young. I'm watching Kobe. I'm watching the Lakers. Like, you know me, I've been a Lakers fan. I got all these. Like, I've been a Lakers fan. And ever since I've known basketball, it's been Kobe. So just seeing this and just knowing how somebody who, you know, I called a superhero, I heard about the news, and, you know, right away I'm thinking, nah, Kobe wouldn't die, you know, like Even if he
Not
crashed,
like that,
he's jumping out. He's gonna land. Like, yo, on God, like I'm like, that's Kobe. He's not gonna die, man. So
holding Gigi as his canopy right above him, saving her life too.
So to me, it was just like and still like it's hard to talk about, but it's hard to even like still register. So even not knowing the man and just not knowing him personally, but what he did for so many people, and I can't even speak I'm speaking for myself, but there's so many other people, not even in the US, but everywhere, who looked at this dude as like a leader, a superhero, more than a basketball player,
More than an athlete.
Exactly. And I don't know, it's just hard to wrap my mind around, and I just can't imagine how people who personally knew him, his family, I can't even imagine what they're going through. That's the worst part.
Vanessa finally broke the silence a few hours ago on Instagram saying, I don't know, I personally don't know if this is a new thing or not, but she came out and whether she had just announced it now or whether this has been something that they were working on the past couple of days, they're starting a foundation to solely help the other 7 people on board that tragically perished as well.
Yeah, I can't forget about them.
And absolutely. And dude, I hold you in high regard as a human being for making that statement. Not because I expected anything less of you, but because it's very important to remember that.
Oh yeah, man. It's not just Kobe and Gigi. We lost 7 other people on that. So, and who else knows who died on Sunday? But it's just
right.
My heart's out to everybody and all their families and friends, and like I said, I'm just a little person who's watching this man on TV and seeing him in the media and praising him as like this amazing player. I can't imagine he was a dad. It really humbles you. It's like, wow, we're humans.
And little ones.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting part of the perspective too, because one thing that I've kind of continuously talked about this entire time with everybody is how amazed I was at how he handled post-retirement. I mean, dude, so many people crash and burn, and rightfully so. And even going from, let alone, retiring player to, former player just like sitting at home. Pete Rose has 1,000 more hits, or almost 1,000 more hits than anyone else in the history of baseball. But because he screwed up so royally as a manager betting on baseball, this man will never sniff the Hall of Fame. And no one's made contact to a baseball more than that man in the history of the game. The larger overall point here is people know how to handle retirement, whether they do it in the public eye. I don't think Kobe had any choice, even though Kobe was never a public person. Kobe was never the Terrell Owens or even of the NBA or even close to it.
No, but it's still Kobe. Everyone's trying to see what he's doing, it's Kobe. Yes.
And an Emmy and AAU coach, obviously the role of father and husband, one to be revered. Bro, as your Laker fandom continues on, and I've said this time and time again throughout this podcast and throughout everybody I've talked to, it's going to sound insensitive when I ask the question right off the bat. However, we just said it literally off the air to each other. Reality. It is very important to know what type of reality you're living in so that your expectations are not either tempered or tampered. And at the end of the day, I'm not saying anyone's are. However, the page has got to turn at some point. As a Laker fan yourself, whether or not the feel might not ever be there like it was when Kobe was still suiting up.
Yeah.
But you've got a fellow all-time great now that has the opportunity to raise the Larry O.B. at the end of the season and say, just like he did a couple years ago, Cleveland, this is for you. Man, he could say, Kobe, this is for you. I mean, that's a powerful thing to think about.
100%.
That's a powerful thing to think about. While it might be unfair to expect him to say that, because what if he doesn't? He may have never thought about it, but goosebumps is what I think about that.
I think deep down, even like you said, no one might announce it. No one might even say anything about it. But let's be honest, deep down the season, I think it's gonna be about not even Kobe, but Kobe's family and Kobe and his daughters, and like this is for them, for the people who died in that plane or that helicopter crash, and lost their lives. It's for them. So it's not just Kobe, it's all those people. So I think, like you said, they might not even say, but deep down, that's gonna be their thing. And we're doing good, and I love the Lakers even when they're bad. But shit, I'm telling you right now, we're gonna be going even harder. The rest of the season, we're going even harder.
I'm glad you say that. I'm glad you say that. 'Cause I've asked people, man, throughout this process. I can't even begin to like imagine what this man LeBron's gonna do. Like when he steps on the floor.
It's gonna be scary, man.
That's the word I use.
Scary.
It's frightening.
Yeah, I'm not even, I'm not lying when I say that. It's just gonna be like that.
No, totally.
Davis,
I absolutely
all
agree.
Those guys.
I mean, I would absolutely be remiss if my man Jameson Sheeley from the Dirty Money
guys
did not come on and talk to me a little bit about Kobe Bryant. So you got to first off talk about what you're sporting, man.
I appreciate it so much, my man. I just want to let you know, first and foremost, I listen to you all the time. I think that what you're doing is amazing. I think you have incredible talent, and I'm more than honored to be here. I wish that we were obviously under better circumstances. Obviously, I think that everyone does.
Talk about the cloth you got on, bro.
But yeah, dude, this is Kobe's last his last All-Star jersey that he wore in 2016, I believe. It was in Canada.
I was gonna ballpark either 15 or 16, so
it was it was in Canada. It's got a maple leaf on the back. It's kind of a little bit like Drake theme, but that's kind of cool. That was what was big at the time. I remember he wore a jacket with Kobe on his back and everything at that game, or at the All-Star game and everything, just to kind of honor him and everything. And it just shows you how many cultural things that even when he was playing, he was already so.
And I'm glad you said culture too, bro. I mean, coming from different cultures, man. Like, the man was born in Italy.
Yeah.
Like, raised over there, obviously, with his dad being a pro, spending time in the league and also elsewhere overseas.
Right.
It feels like more of a cultural thing. Like, for a quick example, Mike Breen said on the Rich Eisen show today, when he was overseas doing an NBA game, he sat in a taxi, and this guy that was driving the taxi just saw NBA on NBC on his chest, and literally said, he didn't say NBA, he didn't say NBC, he didn't say, "Who are you?" He said, "Kobe Bryant?" And Mike Breen's like, "Yes." And he goes, "Do you know Kobe Bryant?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And the guy started uncontrollably crying because he met somebody that knew Kobe Bryant. Like, he met someone that he didn't meet Kobe Bryant. He met someone that
transcended basketball, man. He transcended the sport beyond what it meant to just be a basketball player. And I don't want to say that there weren't other people who did that before him, because you have people that obviously did do political things in the civil rights era and stood up for themselves, and we have Magic, and then we have Jordan, and then we have people who were, but of my generation, I don't remember there being someone who you could literally walk up to 5 random people on the street and 4 out of 5 of them probably know the name Kobe Bryant, even if they don't watch basketball or really have any affiliation to him whatsoever. It's just like, who he is. It's amazing that he was so culturally iconic that his sport never like seemed to contain his
that's a great way to put
his fame, his unbelievable fame. Yeah,
his aura too, man. And I mean, perfect example. Tonight I'm walking by a trash can at work, and I turn around, get ready to do the one fake to the right fade, and I almost say it, and then I'm like, Kobe, no look, swish though, man. It's a cultural thing.
One of those things. It is. It'll never die, and that's the amazing thing about his legacy, is that you can find a little bit of like solace in knowing that it'll live on no matter what with the generation of people that grew up with him. So
absolutely. And we'll go ahead and I'm gonna start bouncing some things off you,
Go
man.
ahead, man. Yeah.
A long way we did come from 1996, the year I was born, and the year that, believe it or not, a pretty solid career unfolded at the top of the draft in Allen Iverson. Another solid career unfolding at 4, Stephon Marbury. Another solid one at 5 in Ray Allen.
It was a great draft.
It was one of the best drafts in my
draft
ever. And, that's really where Calipari began.
Ended up going 13th.
I know. And Nash went 2 picks behind Kobe. Yeah. And for some reason...
that's a phenomenal draft.
For some reason, Charlotte fancied Vlade Divac instead. Tell me, bro, think back. Think all the way back, man. The moment you gazed upon a screen, a TV, a magazine article, I'm talking the exact moment, I'm talking the exact age. How old were you? Where were you when you were like, Kobe Bryant, that's the guy?
When they played the Detroit Pistons in the 2004 NBA Finals, and I obviously, like you said, I'm from Toledo. I'm about 45 minutes south of Detroit, and as a 10-year-old, I remember my fandom of Kobe being so large at the time that, in spite of all the hate that I took of everybody that was a Pistons fan around here, I still wanted to be a Laker fan, and I wanted to cheer them on, and I didn't know what. And then I realized when I saw the game that it's because Kobe Bryant was my favorite, undeniably my favorite player that I had ever seen up until that point. And this is at 10 years old. I mean, I absolutely love the sport of basketball, but even then I knew this is the guy that I want to emulate on the court. He has all of the traits as a basketball player that I would want to have. And even though all of these people around me are basically, giving me shit because I'm not a Detroit fan and I live so close to Detroit, it didn't matter to me because I really, really believed in the fact that Kobe was somebody that was different than everybody else. He was something, you were watching something that you were never, it was history every single time you tuned in. And I wasn't going to not be a part of that. So I remember, that was distinctively, I was in Orlando for my sister's, give me a break for this, but her volleyball tournament that I used to always have to go to. And they had a projector set up because all of the Pistons fans wanted to watch the Pistons play in the finals. And I sat down there with my Kobe Bryant jersey in front of all of these Pistons fans that were grown people, and I watched them lose to the human victory cigar, Darko Milicic, and get my man's 6th championship taken away from him by a team that they should have dominated. But I remember that was the first time. That was the first time I was like, dude, yeah, I am a huge Kobe fan. I love Kobe. Like, he's my favorite player. That was my first time.
Man, dude, good old Darko couldn't sell you. Man. No, Darko couldn't sell you. He couldn't sell the people.
Dude, that Pistons team was so solid, though, and I love Larry Brown. I really did. It was nothing against. I don't want anybody to take that as a diss or a knock on their city.
None of it is.
It really was just more or less when I found out, like, okay, this is my guy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And being your guy and being the one that you harmoniously followed with so many others. And I mean, like I said, I'm speaking kind of in future tense to anyone that is kind of listening to this. So this could make it confusing, but I mean, wait until all the different viewpoints from everyone on here are pretty crazy of when they first saw him and everything. But this is where I think we're going to get the most distinct differences, as him being your guy and as him being, kind of the rock your basketball fandom could lean on. There had to be something about watching him, and there had to be something about him being on your favorite team that drove you nuts. Is there anything? And if so, tell me what it is.
One thing about Kobe that did drive me a little bit nuts was
and don't feel bad. Everybody else.
No.
Everybody else
funny.
totally.
It's funny because I remember talking to my dad about it at the time and other people, but he was so competitive that it was sometimes a detriment to overall team success, I felt like. And I remember specifically when Dwight Howard came to Los Angeles the first time, I had a conversation with my dad about, like, just you saw so much respect for him from him going towards Steve Nash, and then that absolute lack of respect for Dwight Howard. And I get it, and like you're entitled to whatever you can. He numbers didn't lie. Kobe was right at the time, but like the way he acted towards some of his teammates, I would say in that Jordan-esque way, where it's either my way or the highway, was probably the one thing. Because if man, I don't think you can be a true fan of basketball and say if Shaq didn't stay in LA and none of that happened, they wouldn't have won 10 championships.
It's one of the biggest not only what ifs in there are so many what ifs you could pin on so many scenarios in sports. Like, what if the steroid era never came about in Major League Baseball?
Right.
Like, I mean, what if Tyree doesn't pin it on the helmet? Like, what if Shaq never gets traded?
Or that catch in the end zone, man, that he actually made.
That's a really good one as well, you cowboy man, you. But, I mean, another one, too, that's a Lakers win. What if David Stern never vetoes the Chris Paul trade?
You know what? I have thought about that on multiple occasions after seeing Chris Paul, especially as a professional on other teams. And I definitely at the time was very upset about the entire thing because I thought that they put that situation together really well. But then I started to kind of realize the type of teammate that we may have been getting at that time. And I think that maybe in a way I didn't think that he ended his career the way he wanted to at all. But I also I don't think having Chris Paul would have made it any better either. And it's weird, too, because I would agree with you. I'm thinking that you would totally... Absolutely. You think I'm talking nonsense, but... No, I actually agree with you. After watching him the last 10 years since that trade was vetoed, you've seen, or 9 years or whatever it's been, you've seen the unraveling in the playoffs. I mean, lackluster performances. Yeah. I mean... And that's not to throw any shade at CP3, right? Because, like you said, this isn't like to tarnish anybody's, but it definitely got me really upset at the time at David Stern's silver-haired, middle-aged white man ass. But don't worry, Kobe's letting him hear it right now. Right, Kobe's letting him hear it right now. I hope so, and I know he will be. What's weird about it though too is it took Chris Paul to land in Oklahoma City to all of a sudden get things gelling. I don't know how that's working. Yeah. I am sitting in the 730 zip code of all things right now. Chesapeake's a 20-minute drive that way. How that's somehow working and the Thunder are 7 games above 500, I have no idea. He's playing well. He's a very good player, dude. I think that the streakiness would have affected a lot of what he did in LA, and I don't know, learning about what people have said about his ego as well. His teammate difficulties too. Being that, like I said before, maybe that was the one thing that I probably thought was the most difficult about Kobe was him as a teammate. So those two on the same team maybe wouldn't have made that great of a duo that we really thought it was going to be at the time. So. I'm gonna throw in a random question. That probably made me mad at the time, but I'm cool now. Absolutely. I'm gonna throw in a random question to you because I just now thought of it and I feel like it's relevant to our particular conversation.
Kobe Bryant at some point in the late 2000s requests a trade, and a trade is on the table to send him
I remember
45 minutes away from where you're sitting in Detroit. He was going to be a Piston.
He was going to be a Piston. I remember that.
Do you follow Kobe with your fandom to Detroit? Are you swapping your purple and gold for red and blue?
Especially back then, 100%.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have even been a question because of the absolute love I had for that man and his game. And it was one thing that I wanted to bring up too at that time, especially. My mom had first gotten sick with cancer. I don't know how much of I don't need to tell all your viewers and everything they know.
Let them know. Let it out, man.
Every time I remember when she was sick, I'd find solace in watching him and being able to stay up late and watch the Laker games and stuff like that. So back then, I would have definitely changed allegiances, but he meant so much to me as a Laker that I consider myself more of a Laker fan now than I do anything else. He made me an actual fan of the franchise, which is crazy. Like, normally one player doesn't do that, but he really did.
He really did for so many people. You want to know, like, man, at the peak, about 20, like I said, 20 minutes away from where I sit, by miles and miles and miles of a margin, the least cheap seat, the most expensive seat you're going to get. And maybe it's the LeBron effect, and we'll get to LeBron in a second, but it's when the purple and gold comes to town because they know they're going to pack it out. And speaking of these eras of purple and gold, my man, if I had to encapsulate your viewing pleasure into one Kobe Bryant era and only one era, and it could only be one in which he's wearing 8 or 24, which one would it be and why?
It would be 24. And I did some deep thinking about this because I really wanted to do 8 because I thought that the 3P and his basketball aura at the time of being that assassin and being the first one to really not care what people in that generation, what people thought about. He wasn't buddy like the rest of the players are today. And he showed that during that time. And I love that competitive fire. But since people, it has to be something that people bring up and think about. But, since the sexual assault charge came about and he had to get through that as a player, I felt like him changing his number and really redefining himself as not just a player but as a person
Big time.
during those 24 years, playing with all of the injuries that he had, playing, knowing that he knew that he didn't have the best players on his team all the time, but he still played the hardest that he possibly could. He dropped 81 points if he needed to, and that was in an 8 jersey. I know I'm backtracking a little far, but the 24 to me means a lot of redemption for him and a lot of what I really believe his later career and life was greatly about and what he would have wanted it to be about more than anything. It's a redemption number, I think. It really is. You've got
a time machine, Marty McFly, and all the gang sitting right in front of you, and they tell you that they have the opportunity and the power to take you to one single moment in Kobe Bryant's career. Which one are you choosing?
Personally, because I remember seeing it live and it meant so much to him. And that's why it meant so much to me as a fan. It would be Game 7 of that Boston Celtics series in 2010 when they came back and they were down, I believe, 15 points going into the fourth quarter.
They were.
And they came back and won that game and got that monkey off of their back of losing to the Celtics 2 years prior. And seeing how much that meant to him really meant so much to me. So if I could be there in in Staples Center, Game 7. CR Test hit that 3 to ice it. Or Meta World Peace, I'm sorry. Respect.
Either or.
It would have been that moment, definitely. Absolutely.
Where were you and how did you react when you found out about the crash?
I was watching the news about the impeachment, actually, which is a waste of time. And not to be political at all. But while I was watching CNN, I saw the breaking news story come up. And the thing that I think that I knew right away, and being such a big fan of his, I knew basically his if you were a huge Kobe fan, you almost knew his traveling schedule, how he moved. I knew that the helicopter was much a part of his daily commute and how he did a lot of his travel. And when I heard that it was a helicopter and that his daughter was one of the passengers, I think that when that hit me, that's when I found out and really knew how much of an impact. I'm sorry, man. How much of an impact Kobe Bryant really had on my life, and that's when I found out, unfortunately. But I'm glad that I found out through a halfway reputable news organization and not on the internet through some troll or something like that. So.
Right.
I don't think that there's a good way to find out, but I think that I definitely got let down a little bit easier, being that it was one of the first reports on it, and I was privy to the situation as soon as it happened. But
that's a key. That's a key, is that your know-abouts of his consistent whereabouts.
Yeah.
Kind of that hint right away. And what will always be an everlasting narrative with all of us in this thing we call life is that I don't think death is ever a timely thing. However, death creates and also projects and holds up legacies of those that did enough to deserve the legacies they had. And that brings me to the question I have for you next, man, is like a very powerful and strong legacy. And I can only think of a few people on my hands, in all of multimedia, whether it is sports or whether it is music or anything, that has such, an ever glowing legacy like Kobe Bryant does. So in that sense, and with that being said, his legacy to you, given all that you've said and all that you've forecasted for me, his legacy, in your words, is what? As a player, as a human being, whatever you want to encapsulate it.
I would just say he's been so inspirational, an inspiration. Off the court, on the court, he always in my life was a person that I could look to for either solace in his basketball game or in his complete professional and unadulterated joyfulness off the court, and then to see the father that he became and that he was becoming. I think that inspirational is the one word that I've really thought of, and that I can't really put too many words into how lasting his legacy is and how it will be. But I know, regardless, he was unbelievably instrumental and inspirational to so many people's lives, and including my own. And I thank him for everything, and I feel heartbroken for his family, and I want to send all of my good thoughts and good energy his family's way, and I know that I take solace in knowing that he's with my mom now, and they are they're looking down knowing that they're gonna have someone that really tries to do what they would have wanted him to do when they were here. So I want to be a continuation of what they represented when they were alive, and that's both of them were just inspirations, and especially when we talk about Kobe, he was just an unbelievable inspiration.
That's really well said, and I mean, thank you for, like I told you, and I'll go ahead openly admit it on these airwaves and set it off the air. We wear our emotions on our sleeves on this podcast. And I'm going to kind of take a last turn here while obviously I thank you for coming on. I want to wrap up this talk kind of with this, and then I'll let you have the floor to say anything else you might want to say. I don't really want to take a turn into kind of the present day, and definitely don't want to give off the kind of vibe that the last question that I'm going to ask you is a question that does kind of forecast a moving on type of picture. However, in reality, and where we do sit, and even where we sat last summer, Woj tweeted the brand newest member to the fraternity of the Lakers was LeBron James, and obviously there were a lot of mixed feelings. I mean, even through a lot of people you and I know, a lot of people, like there are people that loved it. There are Laker fans that loved it. I think you and I know a couple of Laker fans that didn't want to have anything to do with it. Tell me from your perspective. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Trust me. Yeah, you and I both know. And tell me from your perspective, though, LeBron's era as a Laker, obviously, with garnishing those mixed emotions from the Laker fan base after all these years of it being like that Kobe-LeBron comparison era. Now that this has all happened, and now that everything has kind of been projected in the limelight, even for obviously not for better, definitely for worse. Do you think at the end of the day, and again, I'm not trying to take any foresight off of what the real reason that we are talking, but do you think that the Laker fan base, and maybe even you particularly from your perspective, view LeBron in a different light now? Do you think that this is just a bunch of hot air I'm speaking?
I think it's definitely not hot air that you're speaking. I think that certain people who let the pettiness of like the argument that who was better or worse or whatever that it was that made them on one side or the other. Hopefully you'd imagine that an event like this would give you the kick in the butt to let you know that they're both amazing and they're both a gift to be able to watch, and especially now that LeBron's in purple and gold, being a diehard Laker fan, I'm tremendously happy with seeing with his progression as well. It's just amazing how much he's grown as not just a basketball player, but as a person. The I Promise, the school, the everything that he. I think that you can be as opinionated as you want as a fan, and you obviously have you're entitled to your side of things and the way that you want to see what you see. But in my opinion, if you really look into what that man is about and what he's doing and what he continues to do on and off of the basketball court, you will have, even if you don't end up liking LeBron or his game, you got to respect the man.
Absolutely.
I think that I'm speaking to all the Laker fans out there who are still petty and skeptical about the whole thing. Just be thankful that we have the opportunity to watch such excellence in purple and gold, and let go of the fact that the both of them are phenomenal individuals, First of all, they're phenomenal players. That's the one thing. They're phenomenal basketball players. Second of all, they're phenomenal individuals. And that's something that you can't look over. And, I'm excited to see where the future ends up with LeBron.
Certainly more excited than those that probably took a ticket to Caesars and bet on the Clippers to win an NBA title at the beginning of the year, because I have a feeling that those tickets are being ripped up right about now.
Yeah.
In whatever jest
That'd
possible.
Be so great, man.
My man, Mr. Sheeley, this has truly been an awesome talk with you. Do you have anything else? Man. The floor is yours. Whatever you want to say. Last words, last thoughts.
Last thought, I would have to just say, like I was just finishing up saying before, if you are someone that was ever skeptical for any reason, what you need to do is understand that this man passed away doing something that he loved doing, and that was trying to bring joy to his daughter and his family's life, and
passed down the game as well.
And he passed down so much of the game of basketball to so many individuals in the NBA, so many individuals that aren't in the NBA, so many individuals that have never played the game before. Really look up to the way Kobe, worked his career out and did his thing. And I want to remind people that, he's a human being as well. And God bless, and hopefully everybody and all the fans of either one are praying for him and his family now. I think that's the most important thing. So yeah, I'm sorry. I'm losing a little bit of my train of thought.
But I tell you, no apologies allowed on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just to since you're gonna edit it anyways, I'm so happy that he is the inspiration that he is. I really am. I think that bigger than anything else is his being an inspiration.
Well said, Mr. Sheeley, ladies and gentlemen.
Northwestern University's own and sitting in the flesh, my man Patrick Andrus. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Right. And I feel like I came in like super joyous too, and obviously a somber tone and a somber narrative that kind of lays an overcast over this. However, this is going to be a little bit of a different conversation from maybe the others you hear in this compilation, because Patrick nor I, while we can absolutely appreciate basketball and we can absolutely be fond of the history that it conveys, neither he or I are Laker fans. And that's fine. That's completely fine. And that's more than okay. However, it's not going to be like every other person you hear that's going to have that moment they saw him. It's going to be between Patrick and I for these next 10 to 15 minutes or so. His effect on the game, his effect maybe on the globalization of the game, I think that's a very underrated, and we'll go ahead and start there. I think that's an incredibly underrated cog in the overall legacy of Kobe Bryant. He affected the globalization maybe in ways more so than David Stern did by deciding just to put games on in other countries. Kobe was huge globally, unlike any other. He was bigger globally than I think LeBron is right now, than I think Giannis is right now. You can't put it into words. China especially. That's one thing that's kind of outside of the box that sticks out to me. Legacy-wise, man, I'll go ahead and pass it off to you. Like, is there anything that sticks out to you? Like, I remember this about Kobe's legacy that maybe some other people would glance over.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, I think, with his global reach, and it was just so fascinating to hear these stories about his upbringing in Italy as a child, and the way he would. When he would go to Connecticut women's games, I think I heard he would speak Italian with Gino, and just hearing about how he was so beloved in Europe. And I work in the library at our school, and there's a periodical section, and I was looking at just some headlines from other countries, from the London Times, Sports Star, sports star Kobe dead in copter crash, and that you don't have to ask what Kobe they're talking about, because there's this familiarity with like Michael Jordan and LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, these NBA guys, that they've been able to cross over to other countries in a way that stars in other North American sports really haven't been able to. And you were exactly right. Kobe had a lot of reach in China, and I think I remember there was a whole ESPN the magazine feature a while back about his adventures in China and how he was making this concerted effort to reach out to fans in China. And upon his death, there was this outpouring of love around the world. In Italy, I talked about. I saw in the Philippines. I believe they decorated a court in Manila in his honor. In the UK, France, Spain, just all these nations where you're seeing like the reach of. I almost feel that the NBA is more accessible than the other North American sports, simply because, in a lot of ways, because basketball is an easier game to pick up for children.
Absolutely. Easier game to play, you know. It takes quite a bit of work to walk out of your door and grab a bunch of buddies and decide that you're going to go on a voyage for shoulder pads and helmets and thigh pads. Same thing even with soccer, too. Yeah, you have a net, but if you're really going to get down to the nitty-gritty of it, you don't have shin guards in. You're going to walk home feeling a little bit sore. Basketball, globally, at the Y, in the nitty-gritty town, in the nitty-gritty slums of whatever, you know, poverty-stricken area you want to imagine, poverty-stricken countries you want to imagine, all you need is a hoop, find a ball. And sometimes these guys in other countries, these kids that want to pick up the game and these kids that are inspired to pick up the game, whether it be by Kobe or anybody else, don't even have that. However, it is so accessible because of the fact that it is just, all right, I got a ball. Where's the net? You know, whereas with hockey, Tamoshan, for example, you need $4,000 for ice time. But absolutely, the globalization thing stuck out to me. And if you want to talk, here's something that me and someone else got on a topic of, which I thought was interesting, talking about his actual playing days and what would have been, and in my opinion, is one of the biggest what ifs in sports history, just because of the failure that came as a result of this what if. You think Kobe is having a conversation with David Stern up in heaven right now, like, hey, man, that word veto, you remember what you did to Chris Paul? I think that's one of the biggest what ifs in sports history. What if Chris Paul becomes a Laker? The Lakers are far above 4 or 5 seed perennially at that point. What say you?
So yeah, that's an interesting point about like in 2009, 2010, he wins those titles, and then they sort of taper off. There was the whole Steve Nash, Dwight Howard false start, and obviously there was supposed to be a 3-way deal. I'm trying to make sure I get the details right. I can't remember what the other team was, but it would send Chris Paul to the LA Lakers, and David Stern, like you said, he vetoed it for basketball reasons. And I almost wonder if Chris Paul, if he can have that effect of, I don't know, giving Kobe a post prime in the way that LeBron's been able to find with AD and with Kyrie on the Cavs, if he's able to sort of prolong his greatness, because then not long after the Nash Howard era, if you want to call it an era, is
it was more of a wah.
Yeah, is when he tears his Achilles. And
yeah, man.
I just wonder. You're right. It's a fascinating question.
But I also wonder, in a sense, too, and fabulous points that you make, I wonder, in a sense, too, how a lot of things may have been different if not for, and let's just kind of focus and fixate on Kobe, the human in the basketball uniform now, because I also wonder what may have not become had it been, hell, like, think of that draft in 1996. What if it was Shaq and Marbury? What if it was Shaq and Ray Allen? Like, what if it was, and hell, even Shaq
in a lot of ways was not supposed to land there. And who knew that whoever was sipping tea in the Charlotte Hornets front office that day had a fancy for Vlade Divac more than Kobe Bryant? But someone did, and it made everything possible. But here's my point. The things that became possible that we once thought weren't were by little things that didn't seem to matter much in the moment, such as when he did tear his Achilles and they're bringing out the stretcher for him, and he's like, are you guys crazy? Are you guys crazy? And they're looking at him like, Kobe, are you crazy? Like, we could tell, like, Achilles tears and ACL tears are two injuries where if you've watched sports like you and I have and have longed over pretty much any, like any
You know it when you
competitive nature. Yeah, absolutely. You know it when you see it. People said that were on the Vikings. Teddy Bridgewater wasn't touched by a single person. His knee didn't bend any certain way, but they just knew by the way that it looked and by the way he reacted. Kobe is the anomaly. He says, no, I'm going to stand up with this torn Achilles, and I'm going to make, by the way, both of these free throws. And from my mic drop, I'm going to walk into the locker room under my own power. Human beings don't come around like that.
If I remember, I think he was like pinching it to like make sure it didn't separate altogether, like that. It was just crazy.
Human beings, let alone basketball players, let alone athletes, because we tend, maybe not you and I anymore. I consider you and I kind of in the air of like, we're savvy veterans of watching and loving all things sports at this point. We know how this thing goes, and especially me, I learned it more getting into the MMA space and meeting more fighters than I ever thought that I could. They're just human beings, but some people put these guys up like they're Odysseus and like they have wings and they can fly. Man, Kobe felt damn close. He felt damn close because of things like that. No, man, I'm shooting these 2 free throws with my torn Achilles, gonna make both of them, and then move that stretcher. I'm not Paul Pierce. I don't need a wheelchair. I'm walking out of here on my own power. Human beings, let alone basketball players, don't come around like that very often, my friend. That's my standpoint on that.
I think that's what made the circumstances of his death so hard to stomach for so many people, because there was something so abrupt about how one day Kobe Bryant, as he was just in our lives on Saturday, they said he called up LeBron after LeBron broke his record in Philadelphia, and all of a sudden he's dead. I think Dan Le Batard said it. He vocalized it very well when he said the finality of the thing, like just out of nowhere, Kobe Bryant is dead. Like it was hard for me to fathom. Well,
I'll ask you a question that I've asked all of the people that consider themselves. I don't even know if I can call them fans at this point. Being a Laker fan is a lifestyle. It might be like the only fan base that, not even because of this death and the things surrounding it, and not emotionally at all. I've kind of always thought like this. Like, being a Laker fan is different than, like, say you walk into your class and like, I'm a Patriots fan. Oh, really? Are you? It's different for a lot of reasons. And man, that franchise has been so allured, and I think you made a really good point, and maybe didn't say the word that I would have said, but encapsulated the exact same point that I would make, is invincibility felt like his aura. Like, it felt like he had that cloak. Absolutely. I'll ask you this, like I asked everybody else. The moment you found out, because a lot of people's like first thought is, oh man, nah. Like, let's get one thing straight too. TMZ does report facts. TMZ doesn't scam. They're not National Enquirer. They were first to break the story. Whether that falls under moral code or not, it's for a different podcast, not this one. TMZ doesn't report falsities. They report facts. They always have. People get that mixed up quite often. Just because they're sleazy doesn't mean they report lies. And that was like the thing for me right away. And everybody was saying, it's fake, it's fake. I'm like, TMZ ain't in the business of fake, though. National Enquirer's in the business of fake. Like, the magazines at the Kroger checkout that say Donald Trump had alien baby, they're in the business of fake. TMZ's never been in the business of fake, man. And when I saw that associated with that tag, and then I saw the word helicopter, because I knew that Kobe had said in the past, Kobe had said on a couple podcasts, he took helicopters to games all the time. I thought to myself, oh no, this is the real thing. This is the real thing. Where were you, and how did you react when you found out? Like, could you believe it?
All right, yeah, I'll take you through. I'm glad you asked this question, because what happened was I was on the phone with my dad, and I had no idea for probably about a half hour after the initial TMZ report. I had no earthly idea. What had happened was I was at my computer, and I had on my phone, I think I was watching Indiana play Maryland on a low volume, and I couldn't hear anything. And I was talking to my dad. I get off the phone, and it's just like a normal day, and I go on Twitter, and I see like the first 3 tweets are like very, very terse, like no and oh my god, and then I see like I see the Woj tweet, like the minute it got dropped, I saw Adrian Wojnarowski's initial tweet that Kobe Bryant is among 9 dead, and I'll never forget. I stood up out of the same chair I'm sitting in right now, and I just like held onto the table to support myself. It was as if I was in some kind of stupor, and I'll never forget, like, I was Twitter, and it had like completely frozen up. The trends on the right side of the screen were all gone, and it was like I'd entered the Twilight Zone. I had to refresh it a couple more times until I saw like all these trends: OMG Kobe, not Kobe, bro Kobe, like all these tweets related to Kobe. And I had a lot of I tried calling my dad twice, and he didn't pick up, and I ended up talking to him later. But all these thoughts were racing through my mind, and I thought of Roberto Clemente, and I thought of Knute Rockne, and I thought of Michael Jackson and Prince and David Bowie, and I thought of the crash depicted in American Pie, the song, which I tweeted some lyrics from, that killed the crash that killed Buddy Holly. And I do think that this is a little bit like that moment. The reason Don McLean chose that incident, the death of Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper in a plane crash, the reason he chose that for that song is because it was a generational wake-up call to the early rock and roll generation. And I tweeted last night that I think that this has been a big generation. Late millennials, the early Generation Z. I did not want to. I didn't step out of my dorm for a while on Sunday. I thought about going to church, which I'm a little regretful that I didn't. But It was a situation where I was just on Twitter all afternoon. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, it was 5:30 and it was 6:30. Like, I didn't want to. I'd never spent so long on Twitter. I must have been on there for 10 hours. It was a surreal day. It was a day I don't want to live through again. I'm gonna remember it as long as I live, but I don't want to live through it again. And I woke up Monday and I just couldn't comprehend that Kobe Bryant was dead. I couldn't comprehend it. I still can't comprehend it. It's gonna take a week or two.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to envision that as real life. And poor Vanessa, man. I think about that a lot. And have you ever seen? I think one of the more seen so many of them at this point, as no surprise to everybody. Sports documentaries are, something that you and I can get behind. One of the most brilliantly done sports documentaries, and one that really dives in to Kobe's upbringing in Italy, is the Muse documentary that Showtime did, I think 2013-14. It was 2 or 3 years before he retired. And it chronicled a lot of the Vanessa stuff. And it showed a lot of things family-wise. I mean, this is even before, Gianna, God, so sorry. Gianna was really formulating in her head that she wanted to play. People don't understand this. Gianna only went to Kobe like a couple of years ago and said, "Hey, why aren't you watching any basketball?" He was like, gave her that Dad, probably mouth full, like in a robe. And she's like, it's time to start back up. We need to watch some together. And Kobe was just like, say less, bet. And that was it. And that's another thing, and I'm not going to keep you much longer, man. I appreciate you coming on here, and I think the Twilight Zone perspective that you just gave is pretty freaking brilliant. But I'll leave you with this and say that the thing that sticks out to me that is as commonly being said as anything else, and I mean it's being said by everyone, and it's so true, a lot of people don't live their second acts after sports very well. Like, a lot of people don't. Pete Rose, his first act as a player, fantastic. His second act as a manager, a lot of people could argue about that until the cows come home. However, look where he is now. And there are so many examples that you could give. And even Len Bias, whose career got cut short because he was already indulging in the second act before the first act was over, the second act being drugs, alcohol, violence. The first act, being just drafted and never even got to really even sniff his potential. All that being said is it really somehow, by some way of like this Herculean miracle that, oh my God, Kobe's second act is going to be just as brilliant as his first. Hey, think about that. And that's when the sadness kicks in, because those that are still here that got to witness that second act every day, I mean, we're talking an Oscar. We're talking creativity that had no boundaries. And obviously just the unwinding love and unconditional adoration for his family, especially when he had to build it back up from scratch, because there was a point in time where it was damn near looking like scratch. Vanessa was halfway out. She was. And Kobe fought tooth and nail. I want to thank you again for coming on, man. Do you have any last thoughts or words? So many amazing things have been said so far. I can't wait to turn this baby loose. Any last words from you, Mr. Andres?
I'll just say this. Look, we have people like Joe DiMaggio was able to live into his 70s, this graceful state of kind of being this public figure, the face of Mr. Coffee, the Yankee Clipper. Ted Williams was able to come out at the 1999 All-Star Game and celebrate with all the modern players. You got guys like Richard Petty is able to be around NASCAR, and Jack Nicklaus is able to congratulate Tiger Woods when he won the Masters last year, and Bill Russell is able to joke with Charles Barkley at award shows, and you just have all these greats from former years that are able to just be public figures, be in our lives. And Kobe Bryant, he was supposed to be that. I mean, we were supposed to be able to hand Kobe Bryant down to our kids and be able to say, that man sitting courtside, man, he could play.
And look at how he's forming his daughter to have the same mentality as him. That meme that came out last week where she's trying to figure something out and she gets it. And if Kobe is looking at you and being like, yes, right. You're right, man. Presented with my next guest on this show. Hey, this is a man that never fails to hit me up for fight links. Never fails.
Every time.
A good dude all around. My man Khalid Henry joins me now.
Yes, sir, man.
Bro?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How you doing? Happy to be here, man.
Yeah.
Glad for you to have me on, man.
Glad you're going to be a part of it. I've said to everybody so far that I think this is going to be super, super cool. It's not going to be super, super cool when I'm editing it, because that's going to take forever.
Right.
But regardless, man, it's going to be something that a lot of people can use to remember. And that's kind of where I'll even just jump in on it. Like, a lot of people kind of use this time, especially in the immediate aftermath of something so tragic, as a time to remember. And we sit here and we remember this moment. We sit here, we remember the 81. We sit here, we remember how, to think that Kobe was anywhere near a conversation of getting a monkey off of his back. That was his reality when he only had three rings.
Right.
Needed to get one without Shaq. Did that.
Get a finals MVP.
Did that, man. What you come from the perspective that from Ohio, big LeBron fan, but also just a purist of the game of basketball, like many others that have come on and helped me out with this. When I say remembering and I speak that into existence, like, is there just like one memory about Kobe that like is sticking out like a sore thumb when you think about just remembering him as a player or a person? Could be either.
I won't say. It is really hard to say that is like one specific memory that comes to mind.
I know that's why
from a game. It's just. I'm trying to think of one, man, of just like one specific one I can think of, but I mean, like all throughout like growing up, I feel like the biggest thing for me was like growing up, I used to always play in his shoes, bro.
Oh,
so
man.
Like, I was big into the shoes thing. So I feel like most of my Kobe memories are like, if they're not tied back to actual games, because a lot of his best games, I didn't see a lot of the 8 years, or I saw him, but I was just younger. Right. So, a lot of the Shaq days and stuff, I didn't necessarily get to see or understand it as if I were to watch it now. So most of my memories come from just being young and playing basketball and getting his shoes or watching what shoes he's wearing, man, and just like using that, like tying that into, I'm grabbing his shoes to play basketball, and then like that's just like an inspiration of like, damn, man, Kobe had these on. Like I got on Kobe, so you feel a certain type of way.
It's like that Space Jam effect, man. Like
exactly, literally, exactly, man. And it's just like, so my like connection with Kobe has like kind of always been through like with shoes, you know what I mean? Like as far as specific games or anything, man, like obviously I've been going back and watching all of the 81-point game, the 60-point game, and I feel like the 60-point game is like probably my most specific memory though, just watching that game, because it was just like, damn, this is Kobe's last game. He dropped 60. It's funny because I remember going to sleep during the game. I'm watching it, and it was the same day as the Warriors were going for the
record,
73-9 record.
Absolutely.
So I'm kind of watching back and forth between both games.
Oh yeah, it was on at the same time.
It was on at the exact same time. So I'm watching the Kobe game. I end up like falling asleep during the Kobe game, and when I wake up, like he had just hit a shot. I hear the commentators like 50-point game. So like I'm like, am I dreaming? You know what I mean? I'm thinking I'm dreaming almost. Like 50 is no way, because he started off that game missing his first 5 shots. He was pulling. He wasn't really getting it going. So when I woke up to hear 50, it was just crazy. And at that point, they were still down like 6 or 8 points. So just to watch that game and he's coming down, I'm like, it's no way he hits that shot. Hits it, come down, hits that 3 to send him up. It's just like, damn. So that's probably like the most specific memory that I could think of right now, but that's just because it's most fresh, and I went back and watched that game again. So like that 60-point game has kind of just stuck with me, I guess.
You would not be alone in sharing that sentiment, bro. And a good friend of the podcast, a good friend of many people, many Toledoans, Mr. Blake Rodgers and I shared about like 5 to 7 minutes of our conversation strictly talking about that game.
Yeah, that game is crazy, man.
A myriad of reasons why, too. Like even sitting back here, because they just re-aired it. You can watch it on YouTube anytime.
Right, I watched it, yeah.
Of course. And they re-aired it on ESPN with like that ad-lib commentary from Nagandi and the GOAT of the journalism world, Woj. I mean, what else can you say?
Right.
But what stuck out to me while I'm rewatching it is the same thing. Blake echoed the sentiment to me when we were just talking about it. Even though we knew the outcome, and even though Nagandi said ad nauseum, 15 points to the final 3 minutes. This is where it all begins to take place. You're still like waiting. Like they're down 10, bro.
That's what and now like when I rewatched it, I had the same like reaction. I'm like, wait, bro, like they're still down like 13 points. He only has 47. It's less than 3 minutes left. Like
what's so special about that, bro, is you find yourself in like this place of confusion where it's like, do I really not remember the ins and outs about how this happened? And then that light bulb comes on, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
Because I witnessed greatness.
Right.
And we don't know when we're witnessing greatness. Like, it happens and flashes before our eyes, and then it's gone.
Right.
And we forget how it, like, kind of matriculates. That was so, like, captivating to me, watching it back just those final 3 minutes and, like, being like, when does this begin to
start,
turn?
And I was kind of watching the same thing, like, bro, it's no way that we're down this many points. Like, I'm waiting on them to get started to hit a shot, and it's like the game is getting later and later. There's less time. They're still down 8 with like 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, and it's just like he still has maybe 48 points or something, and just starts going crazy, man. Now, as I'm watching it again, I'm getting excited all over, like I never seen it the first time.
Yes. I got like that, like kind of excitement. We did, not to go way off topic, but Zion's debut gave me a similar level of excitement.
Bruh, I was the same thing, like jumping up and down, screaming in my house, like same thing from the Zion thing. Like I was going crazy. So I was on the same wave with the Kobe. We're rewatching the Kobe 60-point game. Even though the commentators are telling you before, like what's about to happen, like you're still like, it's still crazy, man. It's crazy. So.
It is wild.
That 60-point game, that will always, like, that's something where you'll remember where you're at when you're watching that game. You know what I mean? Like the first time you saw that game.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. And I knew the Warriors were going to end up winning their game, so I actually, even though the sports purist in me still kicks my own ass about it, I didn't flip back and forth at all when it was happening in real time. I was incredibly amazed, not only at what was taking place on the court, but, man, take a look courtside. Nicholas, Jay-Z, Kanye, they're all there.
Everybody there, man.
And that helps me segue into this. You live in Los Angeles.
Yes.
You've permanently relocated, and I'm sure many people listening and watching, while they might be jealous, there is definitely a sense of perspective that has to come from, obviously, I can't even call it a senseless tragedy because sense wasn't involved.
Right.
And it wasn't anyone's, specific action. However, tragedy nonetheless. What's LA? I guess this is a cliche question, but it's the only way I know how to ask it. What's the city has obviously been. It's taken a turn for the emotional worse.
I mean, just leading up to it, like this whole weekend has been like weirdly foggy here. It's never really foggy. So like thick fog to where you can't really see or drive, like leading up to the whole weekend. So just like Sunday morning waking up, it was super gloomy and foggy all over again.
You mean like literally?
Like literally legit fog. Like
gotcha.
Friday on throughout the weekend, legit fog to where like 2-hour school delay level fog. So
they don't never get those out there.
And So 1 second, let me plug in my headphones.
You good? I'm editing this whole thing anyway, so.
Okay. So yeah, leading up to it, it's just been like weirdly foggy. So the morning of Sunday, it was just gloomy, man. Just in bed at the house, laying in the shower. I mean, I think I went and got in the shower and I get out, and that's when I first see like the report. And I see it, and the first report I saw was a TMZ one, and I check it, it's verified TMZ, and I'm like, okay, like it's 2020. If TMZ says something, it's more than likely.
You just echoed something I've probably said to 4 other people so far.
Yeah.
People misassociate TMZ for some reason with like the National Enquirer and like the paper magazines you see at Kroger that says Trump had an alien.
Right. Like
that's
TMZ
that's not what they do.
They've established themselves as like
they don't tell lies.
Yeah, they're accurate, 100%. So I'm like, okay, I know TMZ is not just gonna say that, but I'm not seeing anything else. So I type in Kobe on Twitter or something, and the only thing I'm seeing is Kobe past LeBron. LeBron past Kobe. LeBron past Kobe. LeBron past Kobe. So then, like it's more and more. Then you see the most unfortunate Woj bomb of all time, and and it's just like, damn, that's when it like really set. So, you know, from there, like it's just phone call.
So it was the Woj tweet that had it set in for you.
Yeah, like the TMZ, I'm kind of like, okay, like this is probably real. You're seeing more reports, but I'm like, until I hear something from like a ESPN or respected sports level outlet, I obviously didn't want to believe it. So you're like, I got to hear it from as many sources as possible because there's no way this is going on. So
right.
I see the tweet from Woj, and it's just like, damn, like I was just like, I didn't really know what to do. Like it was just like, what? Like it was just hard to process. I really couldn't even do anything. And from there, I just kind of had to get out the house. So I'm like, I'm gonna go down to Staples. And I'm sure people are gathering out there. So I go down to Staples. Yeah. It's packed because not only is this going on, but the Grammys are happening the same day too.
Yeah.
So downtown it's just crowded, wild. but it's still gloomy though. Like the city is just gloomy. It's not really sunny. And you like go down there and you get to Staples and you get to where people are gathering. And it's just like it's just like it's not even really a whole lot of tears. It's just like more disbelief than anything. I feel like that was the main just like it wasn't setting in for people. Everybody was still just shocked and couldn't really process what was going on. So like right away, I would say the vibe and like the feel was just absolute shock. And now, I mean, it's just like sadness, like you talk to people that like, especially people who are from here, grew up out here. You had Kobe for 20 years. So I don't even know how I would feel. It was probably like, it's even harder for them. Like as much as he was, part of it for us, like it was just like,
imagine
those
people,
I couldn't imagine those people.
Because it's different in a sense. You'll hear once, playing this episode back in its entirety will give context to those that, I mean, in particular, a friend of mine named Danny, who I had on, from a little town called Warsaw, Indiana, where I happened to live for 4 years before I hightailed it up to Ohio. And not only do you somewhat, especially when, from his perspective, he was not a basketball fan until he turned 13. He asked his dad to help get him into it. Lo and behold, his dad says, "Oh, okay, bet." TV goes on. Kobe's on the screen.
Yep.
Rest is history.
Yeah.
And the devotion to that when living on the East Coast is something people don't really understand as the norm in the West Coast. Outside of the barrier that he's right there, if you're at a game at Staples, it's 1 a.m. in New York City if you're trying to witness that.
Watch the Lakers game,
Absolutely. And I think there's something to be said about, people that I stopped I used to judge people that were even like you, like we're just like, I'm a LeBron fan or like I'm a Kobe fan, I'm a Tom Brady fan, I'm a Peyton Manning fan.
Right.
As you grow and get older, I mean, especially with how sports has dominated my life and different perspectives have come in and out of it, I understand it more than ever. And Kobe is like, I feel like Kobe, once again, for everybody listening to this, I say for the 500th time, was different from the people that were different.
Yeah.
It was just another level,
a whole nother level for sure, man. And it's like watching it, you can see in the way he carried himself. Like you can just see, like I was just watching clips of like just the interview. I can't remember what finals it was, but interview asking him like, we're waiting on you to crack a smile. You're up 2-0. And he's just like, job's
not finished.
Job's not done. What is it to be happy
finished.
about? And it's just like he just had that, that next level of competitiveness or edge or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like he was just next level.
I can't believe no one has mentioned that until now. That's one of my favorite bits of any press conference ever because like you hear it on the radio and you're thinking, oh, this guy means business. Watching that, seeing his face,
you felt it. You felt it because that's the typical, response from a player, the politically correct response. Oh, Absolutely. The job's not done. We got to keep going. We can get better. You hear the same things over and over again in these post-game interviews, but like
that was the Magic finals, right?
I want to say, yeah, the Magic Finals, yeah.
We all knew that job was done before the series
but like
started.
but when you're watching it, you can see like he really means business. You know what I mean? Like, so he's another level for sure, man.
A different, entity in and of itself. Another thing I continue to harp on, he's the only individual, and like I've said, and following me on Twitter is enough to kind of get the sense that, I mean, I've been grossly obsessed with anything that keeps score, can be found on a highlight tape, or you can compete in since I was like 3 years old. And never in my life, with maybe the exception of one or two, if I really sat down and thought about it, never in my life have I witnessed someone in let's say Act 1 is their career. And what makes even Kobe's career different from everybody else, you get drafted out of high school. You grow up in front of people's eyes.
Yep.
And, coming into the league, hey, I'm amongst adults now for the rest of my existence. Can't drink for another 3 years. He was a very timid and somewhat quiet, silent assassin when he first got into the league. And which brings me to this. His career, as great as it was, you had the sense, and God, it just makes it so much more heartbreaking, that Act 2 was going to be just as good. And that is so insane to think about.
What's really was tripping me up is like, if you look at his life, so you come into the NBA at 17, 18. You then play in the NBA for 20 years. So you've played in the NBA for longer than you've done anything else. That's mind-blowing to me.
Unreal.
Like, anything that you've ever done, you played in the NBA longer than that. So it was like, it sucks because he was really just getting started on that second half of, or not even second half really, you know what I mean? Like just the next phase of life. Yeah, he hasn't done anything else other than play basketball. So like it was just crazy to see right at the beginning. Like the dude, he's only been retired 3 or 4 years. He won an Emmy already. No basketball player is ever gonna win an Emmy. You know what I mean? He's already. So it's just like, I don't know, man. It's just really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, sad would be putting it so mildly, and like, dude, the thing. This will probably be the third time I've now said this, but you know what's weird and what is a perfect encapsulation of what made him different, and like different from the different, was arguably one of his lowest moments on the floor when he tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
And they're rolling the stretcher out, and he looks at these people like, bitch, what are you doing?
Yeah, like,
no.
Stop it.
I'm going to stand up. I'm going to make both of these free throws. I'm going to walk on my own power. Get that shit out of my face. I remember watching that, knowing it, because, dude, the surroundings and the treacherous that come with either an ACL. I mean, really, and particularly an Achilles. Say whatever you want about what his play was like when he came back. We saw Dwight Powell tear his Achilles the other night, and yeah, that was gruesome because you see his leg kind of pop. He didn't even. I'm not trying to bag on Dwight Powell because he did what other human beings do. He did what even KD, just instantly hopping like back on the ground, like, oh no, this is serious. Again, though, different from the different. I'm gonna make both of these, get that stretcher out of my face. I'll see you guys next year.
I kind of think he really thought he was gonna still keep playing. Honestly, like I feel like for a reason he thought he was gonna walk it off and keep playing because that's just the type of mindset he had, man. So
insane.
Yeah.
Only person that I would even throw that in the realm of possibility for either. Like, I have so much affinity for LeBron, and obviously you too. I don't know if he's doing that.
Yeah, I just don't know either. I don't know if there's anybody else but the man who did it who's doing that.
Right. And again, another unique perspective that's been offered, up. I appreciate you coming on. I want to ask you a couple more questions.
Yeah.
And then I'll go ahead and let you go, my man. So glad we bring up LeBron because obviously when LeBron got to LA and that Woj bomb came down, it wasn't exactly like, a Kawhi and Paul George are now Clippers size Woj bomb because no one saw that coming.
Right.
We all kind of knew and had a feeling that LeBron was going to be a Laker. But instantaneously, And without mentioning any names, you and I know people that wanted nothing to do with it, that repped the purple and gold.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether it was for the sake of argument or for the sake of, I mean, there are a lot of things you could characterize it. I don't judge on that front. But my question to you is, do you think that, obviously, with the tragedy happening the way it has and the limelight, unfairly or not, now being kind of cast on LeBron and Kobe's friendship and relationship as a whole, do you think Laker fans kind of sit back at this point, whether this is a fair question or not, and kind of think to themselves, I mean, maybe I should look at this guy a little bit differently? I mean, a Larry O.B. changes everything, obviously.
Right.
But I don't know. I think this might have been the exception. What say you?
I kind of feel like this whole situation puts the whole LeBron and Kobe argument in perspective. Like, why are we even comparing them in the first place?
Puts it to bed.
Yeah, it puts that to bed. And then when you take into account this man, LeBron passed Kobe all-time scoring list, wearing Mamba for Life shoes. The next day, the Kobe situation happens. His last 2 tweets or last 2 Instagram posts are pretty much
about
passing the torch to LeBron, continue to move the game forward. So I feel like I said, I didn't grow up a diehard Laker fan. I've always was a LeBron fan. That was the first basketball game I ever went to. So I've always just had attachment with LeBron. And even me, when I first heard of him going to the Lakers, it was just weird because there's always been kind of that comparison of Kobe versus LeBron. So it was just weird to see LeBron in the Lakers jersey or envision LeBron in the Lakers jersey.
Worlds colliding, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like now that you can see their relationship starting to grow more and more. I feel like as a Lakers fan, there's no way you couldn't rally around like LeBron and AD and bringing the championship back to LA for Kobe. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I mean, once again, ad nauseum, I could say this over and over again, another really unique perspective. And thank you so much for helping me do this and helping me kind of curate something that I feel is like, definitely the most special podcast I've ever done. Obviously coming with incredibly unfortunate circumstances, but my last question to you, and this makes people go, it's 99-98, Game 7 of the finals. There's 5 seconds left. You're drawing up a play to inbound. Your 4 players are all out on the floor. You can choose for your 5th, and it's number 8 Kobe on one side and number 24 on the right. Who are you putting in the game?
I got to go with 24. But like I said, that's back to the conversation that we had earlier of I honestly watched more of 24 and understood more of 24.
Of course.
I was older and able to process the game at a different level. So I myself would have to go with 24 just because I feel like the 24, he was playing with a different point to prove.
A new chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. When he first came into the league, he was trying to prove himself. I can play with these guys, I can keep up. And then he started winning. And then there was I'm winning with Shaq. So from there, he, when Shaq gone, he's, I got to do this on my own. So I would say 24.
Good answers, man, and good talk, obviously. Bro, all I can say at this point is you gotta pick up on these signs I'm giving you in the DMs, bro. Crackstreams.com.
Oh, yes.
That's where you go every time, dog. It's right there on the front page.
Why go there when I know you're going to bless me within a minute of me hitting you up, man? So.
Oh, bro. And you don't have any idea how many people, like Connor and Khabib, too, like that, the feds get that stream.
Yeah.
And I get 9 messages all at once, like, bro, stream's down. What do I do? And I'm just like, okay, pull up. There you go.
You're the plug, man.
Thank you, man. Sending much love and positive vibes from OKC out to LA, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon, homie.
Yes, sir, man. Appreciate you having me on, man.
But nonetheless, my good friend Eli Milligan joins me, one of my favorite people on the planet. How we doing, brother? To this day. It's a good way to encapsulate how we're tight, to this day. I know the people don't want to hear about that right now, though. We could dive instantly into it, too. I know that yours and I's kind of whereabouts have the capacity to do so. And one thing that I kind of got started, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties over here on the recording side of things. So I got this started a second ago. I don't know how much you heard, but man, Kobe, you know what's kind of lost in his legacy? And I'm not saying it's a crime or anything. However, no one really talks about it. The globalization of the game obviously would be nowhere without Mr. David Stern sitting in like 280 rooms with translators of people that don't speak English trying to negotiate a television deal. Mm-hmm. I can make an argument Kobe helped globalize the game more just by being himself. Yeah. And as cliche and as, like, as that sounds, for example, Mike Breen, who obviously was emotional about it, and obviously you watch a lot of, he told a story the other day about how he got in a taxi when he was, I can't remember where he said he was. He was somewhere.
Is that on the K show?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was on the K show.
Yeah, I was listening to that.
Yeah. Well, to this day, this is how these things work. But nonetheless, he was telling that story. You know what story I'm talking about then, right? He gets in the back of a cab and this guy sees NBA on NBC on his jacket. And he just points at it. He doesn't even say NBA. He doesn't even signify anything about the NBA. All he says is Kobe Bryant.
Kobe?
And then asks him if he knows him. Breen says yes, and it moves the taxi driver to overwhelming tears. Just because he was talking to somebody that was in the rarefied air of Kobe Bryant. I don't know where a lot of people stand on globalization. I also don't know how many people really care. But at the end of the day, it's a massive, massive part, I think, of Kobe's legacy that no one talks about.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I guess it was just the way he played the game, because obviously Bill Simmons made a really great point about just kind of how his career spans between essentially the internet age. I mean, he got in the league 96.com started to get boom. That's everybody has like an email at that point, and through that time, then streaming and everything else happens, but people were able to see basketball where they weren't able before, like where you were only watching the nationally broadcasted games every couple days and you got to see that. Now you can see them everywhere, So, I mean, you have a guy who, like, his lowest career average is 22 points a game against the team, which is absurd.
Come on, Kobe, you can do better than that.
That's his that's his lowest average against any team is 22 points.
Cowherd reminded me of this too. I completely forgot about this. He made the All-Star team as a starter his rookie season, and he didn't even start for his own team.
Yep.
Icon is, I feel like, it is a good way to describe him in totality, but I still feel like it's not enough. I don't know. It's also kind of there are a lot of mystifying pockets too. Other topics that have been constantly brought up with people I talk about. Imagine if the Chris Paul trade goes down. Imagine if he gets sent to Detroit in that trade in the middle of the 2000s. There are a lot of what ifs. Imagine if, the Charlotte. Absolutely. And imagine if the Charlotte Hornets don't have, that one day where they had a bender on Vlade Divac and Kobe's balling in teal and yellow, like teal and blue his whole career. I don't know how much that would have affected. I don't know how much that would have affected his career in totality, though. Some people think that it would have destroyed it. I don't know if I'd go that far.
I mean, genuinely, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to kind of play with the what ifs because it's just
a
massive, it's a massive snowball. But to see like the way it worked out for him, it's great. I mean, I said it before, like, I was never a Kobe fan. Never once was I like, I grew up watching the Knicks, and every time I saw him playing the Knicks, it was like the guy just take your heart out. And
I can't tell you how many times I rooted against him.
Yeah, exactly.
Many times.
The way he played the game was just like this sort of like it goes beyond arrogance, because I don't think he was arrogant. I think it was, no, I'm just better than you, and it's a fact, and there's no way around it. So he just does what he wanted to do, and it was just that simple,
I'll try to take it one step farther just from my point of view. I think there was a sense of arrogance, but I don't think that really came out until he knew he earned it, if that makes sense. Like, the NBA is an incredibly unique style of a fraternity, Like, we see the beefs happen and matriculate all the time. And I mean, just from being a subscriber to SB Nation, I learn of beefs I didn't even know about beforehand. I mean, I didn't know DeMarcus Cousins and Chris Paul had problems. I knew Ray Allen and Kobe had somewhat issues. I didn't know it spanned as long as it did. However, at the end of the day, when the swan song begins and the sun sets, been doing this way too long today. Everybody just kind of, in a weird way, I guess the NFL is kind of like this too. I don't think it is to the effect of the NBA. The group and the brotherhood of it all is just, the aura is captivating. Mm-hmm. And you see how many people were affected by, I mean, it just an absolute tragedy.
You just don't think that so many, I think I can only liken this to like when Michael Jackson died. You know, it's like, I could tell you exactly where I was, you know, and I'm like 12 years old.
Yep.
You know?
Me too.
But it's just sort of like this larger than life figure that you just kind of see and you feel is like invincible to a sense, and to see them just sort of disappear. Like I was literally like, I can't tell you how many times like I've sat there and watched like the detail just to like watch him like break down something, because it's just
love detail.
Yeah, there's, you know, you have athletes and you have really smart people, and you know, not too often though you get an athlete that is an incredibly smart person and has a way of just being able to articulate themselves and, you know, express things that, you know, you don't really find. And I think that's sort of why he's just, you know, there's a transcendence across just so many different walks of life, because he's just in so many different, you know, avenues. You really can't liken it to many other athletes. Like Michael Jordan, for all great he is, I mean, you don't hear him jump in front of a mic very often, and you hear Kobe and you're like, wow, this guy, I'm gonna listen. You know.
How about when he had that Mamba out mic drop at the very end after he dropped 60 from putting up 50, and he had to, you know, bag on himself a little bit at the end, where he's like, you know what's funny though? My entire career, everyone's screaming at me to pass the ball. Why tonight? No, everyone's screaming at me, don't pass the ball. Man, you could point time and time again to so many different areas and create so many different bullet points, Venn diagrams, like whatever you want to do. And I think the family aspect of it, in a way, helps prove that point, but also creates that heartbreak effect, man, because and this is something that everybody, at least from my perspective on TV, has been saying, that hits it on the nail. When you stop talking about what he did on the floor and think about, hey, let's say other athletes in retirement, sometimes act number 2, sometimes the sequel is not as good as the original. Mm-hmm. It is so unbelievable to sit here and think that Kobe was absolutely, undoubtedly on his way to making his second act of his life better than his first, knowing everything that came from the first act and really happening all before our eyes.
Mm-hmm. I was actually, so now you bring that up, it was about 2-3 weeks ago. I was sitting there in my car on my break, and I was reading this article, just kind of, I don't know how I kind of stumbled into it, but it was just about, it might have been on Twitter, and it was about how the regimen that Kobe has instilled with the girls. And, you know, it was going through how he, you know, it's not a matter of, you know, what they're going to do, it's where they're going to college. Like, he was sitting there and with this team, and he said, I'm going to dedicate every ounce of my time for the next 6 years to get you guys where you need to go. And like, I was just sitting there like, yo, that is so fucking cool. You know, like, this guy
was a new starting 5 in a way, man.
Dude, 5, he's like, he had these girls practicing every single day, and he's there every day leading the practice, you know, going through drills, kind of teaching them the mentalities and the intricacies. And he's like, no, you know, like, I love the game, but you know, for all it is, but they're going to know the inside and outs before they start learning the other things. And then I'm going to grow with them. But I have a structured plan that I want them to follow. And I was like, it's kind of like, there aren't many words for that. And especially someone like that, who's so rich and powerful, to say, you know, screw it, this is what I want. You know, I want to grow these girls and, you know, help them blossom into these athletes. And I think like part of that is just what broke my heart the most. Obviously, like his daughter being involved, but seeing the amount of dedication that he put into his family, it really just tears you apart.
Absolutely. And one thing that sticks out about a lot of the brilliant points that you just made is that he didn't really want a whole lot to do with basketball after basketball until his daughters kind of tugged him on the robe and said, "Hey, remember that thing you used to do? Orange ball, kind of round, bounce it, put it in this thing. Yeah, we want to do that too. We're gonna get that started anytime soon." A lot of people don't know Kobe was not watching basketball. He was not watching the NBA and not doing any of the things that you're saying until his daughters asked him to. And once they finally did, it became his life again, because if they wanted it to become theirs, nothing was going to stop him. Again, though, a heartbreaking cog in it. It's, and when I saw helicopter, I knew it wasn't fake.
Mm-hmm.
Because I heard him say on podcasts before that he took helicopters all the time.
Yeah, I got a text from one of my coworkers just like, Kobe Bryant dead, and I was like, they kill celebrities all the time, Like I was like, I'm sitting here playing Overwatch, like I'm in a deep game, like,
yeah.
And I stop and I'm like, no way. And I go on Twitter and all I see, and I was just like, holy shit! Like, just that fragility of just more like your mortality just kind of hits you right there. And you realize that there really is no guarantee to anything,
At all. And, people will sit and point fingers and say that things could be prevented. And, it's not really the time for that, the investigation. I've tried to make this podcast as little about the ins and outs and nuances of the actual crash as possible. But, all of that news will come to light. Regardless of it all, I'm going to ask you a question. I told you beforehand that I had like kind of predetermined questions for those that lived and breathed the Lakers once they saw Kobe Bryant in the flesh doing what he did for the first time and pointed at the TV, no matter how old they were, and said, "Yep, that's my guy, never looking back." Because that's the consensus, at least from what I've heard. And I get mixed reactions to this question, and I want an answer from you from an impartial standpoint. Now that LeBron has obviously been here for a while, as you can remember, and I know plenty of people that sit on this boat. I don't know now though. They didn't want LeBron there. They didn't want anything to do with it because Kobe and LeBron were kind of, versing each other from a comparison standpoint for such a long time, and people that were Laker purists didn't want anything to do with having to take that laundry out of the dryer. Now that you see their relationship, I think we all knew they were boys. I don't think a lot of people knew, and maybe it's evolved since he got there, just like how close they were. Does your opinion on, or even better, if you were a Laker fan and you were on that fence, would this tragedy change the way you view LeBron in a Lakers uniform?
No, I don't. I mean, like, I feel like there's just some groups of fans that are kind of just, they are unique into themselves, and
that's a nice way to put it.
I for me, as a lowly, sad, battered Knicks fan, if I had any player to the caliber of LeBron or Kobe the last 20 years, man, are you kidding me? I'd love them. But I think they want to look for a reason to take something away from somebody who's gone so close to kind of dethroning something that they've idolized and they've looked at for so long, Also, it's just like the way that it's that mentality that Kobe has and the mentality that LeBron has had. They've kind of walked separate paths in that sense because they've been so different. And I just think I'm kind of a believer that you can't really compare basketball players once you get to like a certain level. Just because there's so many different aspects of their game. You know, if you're gonna play something, then play based on position. But I don't think that you can just take someone's career and they're, you know, you have a guy who's got 5 championships, 6 championships, LeBron with 3. You can't really. The championship number goes out the window, and individual stats are so similar. How they've interacted with teammates is, you know, when you're that good, you're gonna rub some people the wrong way. I just
Kobe
think
definitely rubbed a lot of people the wrong way,
but
in
he
a
also
good
made it
way,
better.
though. Yes, absolutely.
Right, I'll give you a perfect example. 2008 Olympics. I mean, every single one of those guys on that team had the best year of their careers after that. And so many people
fascinating point.
So many people attribute that to Kobe. Even the year after, like the 4 years later, so many of those players had some of the best. Like Dwayne Wade's the perfect example. I mean, he peaked after that Olympics. LeBron James peaked. All these players had the greatest years of their career after playing with him. So but I don't think you can sit there and just run and try to put somebody on a pedestal. I think it's just you appreciate the greatness, how they play the game, and who they are, and accept them.
Or it's either you do or you don't. And like you said at the beginning, there's a lot of people that sit on that side of the fence that just refuse to. I'm hoping, at least for just their poor evil hearts' sake, that should LeBron will it, and I think this is a question I don't think anybody wants to ask at the moment, because obviously the sensitivity to the tragedy and everything surrounding it is what's still fresh on our minds. However, if I were to go ahead and turn the page, what kind of mindset are we going to see come out of LeBron fucking James, of all people? If there's one human being in any sport that I don't want to have the switch flipped in January, like I said, it's an insensitive topic to the current conversation. However, this will be the conversation soon.
I mean, yeah, no, you're right.
That's
I mean,
a dangerous proposition for the league.
When you talk LeBron James, I mean, he doesn't have many peers in that, you know, in the sense of just people who are on his same field. And when you have somebody like Kobe, who obviously he looked up to, had a close relationship with, there's 2 things that are either going to happen. He's either going to turn it the fuck on and go psycho for the next however long he plays, or maybe looks at life differently. And because you see all the ventures he has with his family, like I can't tell you how pissed I got just hearing people batter LeBron for flying to Springfield to go see his son play and then go play a game. It's like, he's a father first, man. Like,
right. People don't think clearly, though, bro, especially on the internet. People don't think clearly, especially before they hit the tweet button. They really don't.
Yep. Like, I'm looking at that like, bro, like that is the most beautiful thing. Like, he's saying like no, like this is, I want to be there. You know, I work a schedule unlike, you know, anybody in the world. And if I have the opportunity to see my son play, I'm going to be there, you know? Or like I was saying, though, maybe he steps away from the game, which would that be unheard of? Absolutely.
Wow.
But
that's a take that I have not heard. I must admit. But it is, maybe fascinating is not the word for me, but it's intriguing. I don't
think it's going to happen either.
But I'm not saying
so
that is your set take, but that's a new one. I haven't heard that.
I mean, it's something like this that's just so, you know, humbling to the sense of just realizing just how short life is and how many ventures he has and with his family. Like, you know, for somebody like that to just say, like, we see it all the time with football players. Not that he's putting himself in any inherent danger playing basketball, but, you know, what really matters when you're not there? The only thing that matters is your family. And, you know, like I said, I don't think it's not going to happen. Like, his quest is to be number 1, obviously, but is it outrageous? I don't think so.
Maybe not. And you've offered me some fresh perspective. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of begin to wind down to get out of here. You know, I said going into it before we started recording, kind of off camera, we could easily just bounce topics off of each other and let it carry us wherever we so please, and it just did just that. My man, Ready to see you next week. It'll be a fun time. Do you have any last like things or thoughts on your mind about this terrible thing that happened?
I mean, I would just say like it's interesting to see the perspectives of people, but what happened in Colorado, I don't think that we should also sanctify somebody and forget that there's obviously some question marks that still exist. And
you got guts. You got guts for saying that, though.
Listen,
and I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you.
Let them come for me, but I just
nobody's gonna come for you.
Yeah, the Bayhive.
I don't disagree with you. All like
it's not obviously you don't want to speak ill of the dead. It's categorically it's wrong, and go for what it is. But let the good be good, but we can't forget what is the bad and what did happen. And obviously we don't know all the details, and there's always a he said she said, but there's
charges dropped and everything like that kind of wipes your hands clean.
Yeah, but
it's just like clean.
It happened, and it is something that needs to be acknowledged, and I don't think we should be running things down people's throats when they bring that up, because it did happen.
And now you've put me in a position to where if I cut that out of this podcast, I have no balls for the rest of my life. It only the way you could do it, man. Appreciate you, buddy. I will see you in what? A week from today.
I'll be flying out.
Week from today.